Chapter 797. The sunlight dissipated and everything returned to normal. However, Qinchuan was unable to calm down for a long time. Kargad was dead, but Song Hao was also dead. They had won the battle, but it was an incomparably tragic victory. All along, Song Hao had been a senior that Qinchuan respected the most. His position in Qinchuan's heart was no different from Ning Zhongtian's. But now, he had only been back for 2 days, and he had already received the grievous news of the death of 2 seniors. How could he be in a good mood? "Senior, I'm sorry. It's all my fault." Qinchuan looked at Song Hao's corpse beside him, and tears once again flowed down from the corners of his eyes. He had promised to help Song Hao escape, but he never thought that the moment Song Hao regained his freedom would be the moment of his death. If he had known that something like this would happen, he would have definitely broken the immortal trap charm array for Song Hao as soon as he rescued Star Dragon City. "It's because I'm not strong enough." The more things he experienced, the more Qinchuan realized how weak he was. If he was strong enough, how could something like this happen? In the final analysis, being weak was the original sin. Qinchuan. Lu Zi slowly walked over and stood beside Qinchuan. She looked at Qinchuan with an extremely complicated gaze and whispered, "No one wanted to see something like this happen. Don't be too sad." Senior Song Hao was smiling when he left. "I don't think he has any regrets." Hearing Lu Zi's words, Qinchuan nodded gently and whispered, "I know what you're saying, but, Qinchuan, people have to look forward." Ningya slowly walked over and whispered to Qinchuan, "When Master died, I was just as sad and pained as you. However, people can't live in the sorrow of the past forever. They have to look forward and walk out of it. Right now, the Star Dragon Federation has many things to do. The crisis facing the human race hasn't been completely resolved yet. Everyone still needs you. You can't fall at this time." Qinchuan pursed his lips and said to Ningya, "Teacher, I will be strong." As he spoke, Qinchuan turned his head and looked at Gaoen, who was not far away. He said to Gaoen, "Brother Gao, I want to do something. I need your support." Hearing Qinchuan's words, Gaoen replied almost without hesitation, "Qinchuan, you are our savior, the savior of the entire Star Dragon Federation and even the entire human race. I will support you unconditionally in whatever you want to do." Qinchuan took a deep look at Gaoen, then turned his gaze to Song Hao's corpse on the ground, and said to Gaoen, "I want to release all the Monster Clan experts sealed in the Star Dragon Federation." Hearing Qinchuan's words, everyone was stunned. No one expected that Qinchuan wanted to do something like this. If Senior Song Hao could have broken free from the immortal trap charm array earlier, perhaps he wouldn't have died today. "I don't want the regret of today to happen again," Qinchuan said in an extremely firm tone. "Therefore, breaking the immortal trap charm array and releasing all the Monster Clan experts is something I must do." Hearing this, Gaoen said to Qinchuan with a subtle tone, "Qinchuan, I said that I would support you in doing what you want to do, and I won't go back on my words now. However, I hope that you can be mentally prepared. Not all the Monster Clan experts can survive until now like Senior Song Hao. Perhaps when we break the immortal trap charm array, we will only see a rotten corpse." Hearing Gaoen's words, Qinchuan's expression couldn't help but become more determined. He said in a deep voice, "Even if it's a corpse, I will let them regain their freedom and see this world again." Zerg's General Kargard broke the seal and wreaked havoc in the world. Azure Dragon Song Hao reappeared in the world. Qinchuan created another miracle and killed Kargard. Not long after this series of events happened, it quickly spread throughout the Star Dragon Federation, and even the Boundary Mountain and the Monster Realm, shocking the world once again. Now that Kargard, the sword of Damocles hanging over everyone's heads, was finally destroyed, the Star Dragon Federation finally had a chance to breathe. As for the traitors who were resisting the Monster Clan in the Boundary Mountain, led by Starry Sky and the others, they almost collapsed instantly after hearing this news. They completely gave up resistance. The monster clan finally broke through the Boundary Mountains defense line after a few days of fierce fighting, saving the people of the Boundary Mountain from disaster. At this time, as the monster emperor, Yao Feng also received the news that Qin Chuan was going to break all the immortal trap charm arrays and release all the monster clan experts who were sealed back then. Your Majesty, is this true? Xue Qiu looked at the information in her hand and could not help but tear up. If Qin Chuan really did this, it could be said to be a great blessing for the monster clan. Yao Feng nodded and sighed. Azure Dragon Song Hao's death had a great impact on Qin Chuan, and that's why he made this decision. This is a good thing, but none of us know if the immortal trap charm arrays will be broken or if the immortal trap charm arrays will be able to return alive. After hearing Yao Feng's words, a complicated expression appeared on Xue Qiu's face. She said in a low voice, "It doesn't matter if the monster clan experts can return alive or not. As long as their bodies can be buried and their souls can return to their homeland, that's enough." "You're right. This time, I plan to personally make a trip to the Star Dragon Federation," Yao Feng said to Xue Qiu. "As the current monster emperor, I must personally take part in the great event of welcoming the Monster Clan's seniors back." "Your Majesty, wouldn't that be too dangerous?" Xue Qiu was somewhat hesitant. "After all, that is the territory of the human clan. Haha, the strongest expert of the human clan now is Qin Chuan, and Qin Chuan is our future son-in-law. Could it be that he will look on helplessly as I am besieged by the human clan experts?" Yao Feng laughed. "Don't worry about it. The world is so big. If I want to leave, no one can stop me." Just when Yao Feng and Xue Qiu were talking, Yao Rao, who had received the news, rushed over. The first thing she said to Yao Feng was to go to the Star Dragon Federation with him. "Imperial Father, I want to go to the Star Dragon Federation with you." Yao Rao walked over to Yao Feng's side and sat down. Then, she grabbed Yao Feng's arm and assumed a posture of not letting go unless Yao Feng agreed. Looking at the expectant and excited expression on Yao Rao's face, Yao Feng chuckled and said, "Do you want to go with Imperial Father to welcome the Monster Clan seniors back, or do you want to meet Qin Chuan?" Hearing Yao Feng's words, Yao Rao's complexion turned slightly red. Then, she said in a low voice, "Why are you making such a clear distinction? In any case, we won't delay each other." "Haha, what a good won't delay each other." Yao Feng laughed heartily. "Since you want to go, then come with me. By the way, I want you to introduce me to that human clan girl called Lu Zi." Hearing Yao Feng mention Lu Zi, the expression on Yao Rao's face suddenly became somewhat subtle. Chapter 798. When he learned that Yao Feng would bring Yao Rao to the Star Dragon Federation, Qin Chuan was very happy because he could finally see Yao Rao again. However, what made Qin Chuan's mood a little strange was that whenever he thought of Yao Rao, the image of Lu Zi would always appear in his mind. "What's wrong with me? Obviously, the person I like is Yao Rao, so why does little Zi's image always appear in my mind? Am I really a scumbag?" Qin Chuan's mood was a little complicated. He had always thought that he was a loyal person, but now it seemed that he wasn't. Qin Chuan had always been very clumsy when it came to matters of the heart. The more things he experienced, the more he cherished the people around him. He didn't want to hurt anyone, but he also didn't want to easily let go of anyone. However, between two difficulties, he always had to choose. "What are you thinking about?" Just when Qin Chuan was in a dilemma, Ningya slowly walked over and sat down beside Qin Chuan. "Teacher." Qin Chuan looked at Ningya and said, "Tomorrow, I plan to go to Sky City." Hearing Qin Chuan mention Sky City, Ningya's gaze slightly moved, then she said to Qin Chuan, "Do you want to take advantage of the time before the Demon Emperor and Yao Rao arrive to settle the grievances of those years?" Qin Chuan nodded and said to Ningya, "I have been waiting for this day for too long. Now, I don't want to continue waiting." Now that Zerg had been completely defeated, it wouldn't be long before the remnants of Zerg's army were cleaned up. And before they counterattacked the center of the Kunlun field, they had to clean up the inside. Whether it was from Qinchuan's point of view or from the point of view of the entire Star Dragon Federation, the matter of Sky City had to be settled. You are already an adult. After experiencing so many things, you already have your own thoughts. Rest assured and do it boldly. Teacher will always support you. Ningya faintly smiled and said to Qinchuan, "Don't hesitate, you will lose if you hesitate." Qinchuan nodded. "I know I'm going to die from anger because of those bastards." At this moment, Lu Zi quickly walked in from outside, her face full of anger. Seeing the anger on Lu Zi's face, Qinchuan asked curiously, "What happened?" "Brother Gao told everyone that you were going to break all the immortal imprisoning talisman arrays. I didn't expect that many aristocratic families would raise objections today. They don't agree to break the immortal imprisoning talisman arrays." Lu Zi said angrily, "Back when we were fighting against Zerg, I didn't see them show up. Now that things are calm, they're jumping out one by one." Hearing Lu Zi's words, Qinchuan couldn't help but frown slightly and ask, "What is Brother Gao's opinion?" "Of course Brother Gao is firmly on our side." Lu Zi replied, "None of those aristocratic families are good people." After saying this, Lu Zi hesitated for a moment before saying to Qinchuan, "Moreover, the Qin family is also on our opposite side. However, Qin Yiming secretly contacted me and said that he wants to meet you and tell you the truth about these opposing voices." Qinchuan raised his eyebrows slightly and muttered, "The truth?" In the coffee shop at the corner of the street, Qin Yiming looked at the pedestrians on the street and sighed softly. He said to Qinchuan, who was sitting opposite him, "Now that the Elf City can return to peaceful life and the entire Star Dragon Federation can settle down again, it's all because of you. You're our benefactor." Qinchuan said indifferently, "So this is how you people treat your benefactor?" Hearing Qinchuan's words, Qin Yiming bitterly smiled helplessly and said to Qinchuan, "If I said that this wasn't our intention, would you believe me?" Qinchuan sneered and asked, "If it wasn't your intention, then could it be that someone is controlling you from behind the scenes? You don't even care about Brother Gao's attitude. Who else in the Star Dragon Federation can control you aristocratic families from behind the scenes?" Qin Yiming looked deeply at Qinchuan and said in a deep voice, "You know about the Ancient Ones, right? The Ancient Ones." Hearing this somewhat familiar name again, Qinchuan's eyes couldn't help but flash with a hint of coldness. He asked, "Are they the Ancient Ones who chose to hide in their shells in the face of Zerg's invasion? I think you should have a certain understanding of your Grandmaster's death, and you should also know about the existence of the Mountain Guardian." Qin Yiming looked at Qinchuan with an extremely complicated gaze. The Ancient Ones who raised the objection were the Mountain Guardian from back then, and also the founders of our 4 aristocratic families. Hearing Qin Yiming reveal this extremely shocking information, Qinchuan's expression suddenly became ugly. He gritted his teeth and said, "In other words, the Mountain Guardian who betrayed my Grandmaster and let him face Kargat alone is the same group of people as the Ancient Ones who opposed me this time?" Qin Yiming nodded and said helplessly, "They are indeed the same group of people. Back then, there were a total of 6 Mountain Guardians. Among them, your Grandmaster, Ning Zhongtian, was in charge of guarding Kargad's seal in the Black Moon Mountain Range. The other 5 went down the mountain and entered the world, respectively establishing the Qin, Yi, Qian, and Shiman aristocratic families, which have been passed down to this day. As the founders, they fell into a state of deep sleep a long time ago to slow down the consumption of their lifespan. They rarely wake up, to the point that the world has already forgotten about their existence." "What about the other person? Is he dead?" Qinchuan frowned. 5 people went down the mountain, but why were there only 4 aristocratic families? "The other person didn't establish a family, instead, he established a city." Qin Yiming replied, "That city is Black City." Qin Yiming's answer could be said to be out of Qinchuan's expectation, but it was also reasonable. Because in the Star Dragon Federation, other than the 4 aristocratic families, the most powerful force was Black City. That year, the 5th person established Black City, and it continued to this day was nothing strange. Now, Black City has already betrayed the nation and became independent as the Kingdom of the Sky. They are our enemy. Qin Chuan looked at Qin Yiming and asked, "Don't tell me that the ancient ones of your 4 aristocratic families don't have any opinions about this?" In their eyes, this is just a trivial matter. As long as we sincerely admit our mistakes, all the past mistakes will naturally be written off. Qin Yiming smiled bitterly. In their eyes, our attitude isn't important. Qin Chuan sneered and disdainfully said, "They are really a group of immortals who look down on all living things from high above." Qin Yiming earnestly said to Qin Chuan, "The reason I asked you to meet today is to tell you that the opposition to you breaking the immortal trap charm array is not our opinion, but the Ancient One's opinion. The enemy you have to face is not our 4 aristocratic families, but the Ancient Ones. I hope you can think thrice before you do anything. Their strength is unfathomable." Qin Chuan looked at Qin Yiming with a subtle gaze. "Thank you for your reminder. How to do things, I will think about it in my heart." Chapter 799. There was an underground palace made of bronze under Sky City. This was a secret that no one other than Shangguan Yuanhao knew about. Shangguan Yuanhao could not help but reveal a complicated expression as he stood in front of the underground palace again and stared at the sealed door. The last time he had been here was several decades ago. If it were not for the summons, he would have almost forgotten about this place. Boom! Just as Shangguan Yuanhao was thinking about this, the bronze door in front of him slowly opened. A young man in a white robe walked out. Hearing that familiar voice, Shangguan Yuanhao couldn't help but reveal a look of astonishment. He cried out involuntarily, "Master, how did you come out?" Facing Shangguan Yuanhao's shock, the man in white smiled and said, "When it's time to come out, I naturally came out." But Shangguan Yuanhao looked at the man in white. "The outside world is very chaotic. You're talking about Zerg, right? I already know about it. Now that everything is calm and peaceful, it's time for us to reappear and set the rules. If we don't come out now, we probably won't have the chance in the future." The man in white took 2 steps forward and suddenly turned to Shangguan Yuanhao. "Oh right, I forgot to tell you. Your master has a name too. My name is Jing Yu. Star Dragon City, Yi family." Yi Qingning stood by the wall of the cultivation room and looked at the man in white who suddenly appeared. She said coldly, "Who are you? How did you get into my Yi family?" The man in white looked at Yi Qingning calmly and said, "You're the heir of my Yi family, right? You're quite talented." "Who are you?" Yi Qingning frowned. "What do you have to do with my Yi family?" "Me? You can call me Ting Zhu." The man in white looked at Yi Qingning. "My name is Yi Ting." Just as Yi Qingning was about to ask something, Yi Cheng suddenly barged into the cultivation room. He looked at Yi Ting in shock and said, "Ting Zhu? Why did you suddenly come out?" "When it's time to come out, I naturally came out." Yi Ting turned to Yi Cheng and said, "From today onwards, I will take over the Yi family again." Qin family. Qin Chongshao stood in the main hall of the underground palace and looked at the silhouette of the beautiful lady who was sitting cross-legged on the lotus platform. There was no evil intention in his eyes. There was only respect and a hint of fear. "Ancestor, Chongshao is here." As Qin Chongshao finished his words, the lady who was sitting on the lotus seat opened her eyes slowly. She looked at Qin Chongshao, who was standing not far away, and said nonchalantly, "Now that I've come out of seclusion, the Qin family will definitely soar and take control of the Star Dragon Federation. I, Qin Fenghua, am the king of men." The Qian family. Qian Baobao stood in front of the entrance of the underground palace, looking upset. He said to his father, Qian Russian, "Father, Why didn't you tell me earlier that there was such a fun place at home? I'm already past the age of hide and seek, and you only brought me here now. You're so mean. Watch your words. Qian Rushan glared at Qian Baobao and said sternly, "This is not a place where you can mess around. Behave yourself." When Qian Baobao saw how serious Qian Rushan was, he couldn't help but be shocked. He muttered softly, "What is this? Why are you so serious?" Just as Qian Baobao was muttering to himself, Qian Rushan had already stepped forward and slowly pushed open the door of the underground palace. A large hall appeared in front of Qian Baobao. When Qian Baobao saw the scene in the hall, he couldn't help but be stunned. The huge hall was actually made entirely of gold. In the center of the hall stood a golden pagoda. A tall figure was sitting on top of the golden pagoda, looking solemn and dignified. Qian Rushan looked at the tall figure sitting on top of the golden pagoda. He knelt on the ground with a respectful expression and said loudly, "The 68th head of the Qian family, Qian Rushan, welcomes the ancestor out of seclusion." After the greeting, Qian Rushan looked at Qian Baobao beside him and said, "Kneel down and greet the ancestor." Qian Baobao kneeled down beside Qian Rushan in a daze. He said with a trembling voice, "Qian Baobao greets the ancestor." When the tall figure sitting on top of the golden pagoda heard this, he slowly opened his eyes and looked at Qian Baobao, who was slightly trembling. He said indifferently, "Is this the young talent of my Qian family? This is really disappointing." When Qian Rushan heard the words of the tall figure, he immediately said with some fear, "Ancestor, this is all my fault." "It's fine." The tall figure said indifferently, "With my personal training, even if this is a piece of scrap iron, it will turn into gold. There will definitely not be a piece of trash in my descendants." Shiman family. As a person who had always been excluded by the Shiman family, this was the first time Shiman Bey was treated so seriously by the great elder and patriarch of the family. "Xiao Bei, the family was indeed somewhat unfair to you in the past. However, you can rest assured that in the future, you will be the target of the family's full cultivation. In the future, the Shiman family will also be under your control." Shiman Qing looked at Shiman Bey with a complicated gaze. If there was an outstanding person in their direct bloodline, then how could such a rare opportunity be given to Shiman Bey? "That's right, Xiao Bei. As the future successor of our Shiman family, you must repay evil with kindness. You must forget all the unhappiness of the past and start a new life in the family. People should always look forward." As the great elder of the family, Shiman Changyue rarely cared about the internal struggles of the family. Now that they had encountered a major matter related to the future of the Shiman family, he couldn't help but warn Shiman Bey to avoid any accidents in the future. Hearing the words of Shiman Qing and Shiman Changyue, Shiman Bey was completely dumbfounded. He somewhat couldn't believe it and pointed at himself. He asked in astonishment, "Me? Future successor?" "That's right, it's you." Shiman Qing nodded. "This is the idea of me and the great elder. It is also the idea of the ancestor." Shiman Bey was somewhat surprised. "Ancestor? Who is that?" "That is the person we are about to bring you to see." When the ancestor was mentioned, Shiman Qing's expression suddenly became serious. "The ancestor is the founder of our Shiman family. He is the ancestor of our Shiman family." Shiman Bey was shocked. The Shiman family had been passed down for at least several thousand years. The ancestor who had founded the Shiman family was actually still alive? The ancestor's name is Shiman Weiyang. He will be your master in the future. Master? Shiman Bey was completely dumbfounded. Everything that had happened today made him feel as if he was dreaming. When the gate of the palace slowly opened and he saw that imposing figure, he woke up from his dream. It turned out that everything was not a dream. Everything was actually happening. Chapter 800. Those old fogies have all come out. Gowan stood in front of the bed, looking at the sunset in the sky, and could not help but let out a long sigh. When the Star Dragon Federation and even the entire human race were facing a catastrophe, these Ancient Ones did not move at all. They stayed in their own territories and did not have any intention of coming out of seclusion. When all the problems were solved and everything was calm, these Ancient Ones jumped out and wanted to share the cake. It was really hard to say what to say. They came out at the right time. It's time for them to realize that this is no longer their era. Qin Chuan smiled, but his eyes were cold. He really did not have a good impression of these Ancient Ones. If it were not for their cowardice, Zerg would not have been able to run rampant until today. Qin Chuan, these Ancient Ones did not live for nothing for so many years. You have to be careful, Gao En reminded Qin Chuan. Don't underestimate your enemy. You are not truly invincible. I know. After all, I have only been cultivating for less than 10 years. If these old fogies are so easily surpassed by me, then they have really lived for nothing. Qin Chuan pursed his lips and said in an extremely firm tone, however, if they think that they can get what they want by flaunting their seniority, then they are too naive. This is an invitation jointly sent to me by the 4 major families. They want to invite me to discuss matters related to Sky City. It seems that they want to be a lobbyist for Sky City. Gowan sighed and said, I really don't understand. Is betrayal really so insignificant in the eyes of these Ancient Ones? Qin Chuan's eyes gradually became sharp, and he said in a cold voice, if they really knew what propriety, justice, integrity, and honor are, then they would not have let my Grandmaster face Kargard alone back then. For thousands of years, their humanity has long been obliterated. Now they are just a group of self-righteous false gods. Hearing Qin Chuan's evaluation of these Ancient Ones, Gowan could not help but agree, because these Ancient Ones were indeed a group of self-righteous false gods. You are the real God, Gowan looked at Qin Chuan and said with emotion, the real God who protects all living beings at dawn. I am not a god, I am a human. Qin Chuan shook his head. Gods are too aloof and lonely. Humans are warmer and more affectionate. You are right. You are a human, and we are all humans. Gowan looked at Qin Chuan with admiration. There are too few young people nowadays who have a clear self-awareness like you. You are really a very special and precious existence. When? The next morning, Qin Chuan stood in front of the Dragon Spirit Lake. He lit a stick of incense for Tsang Hao, who was buried at the bottom of the lake. He pursed his lips and said, Senior, I will visit you often in the future. When Huitong saw this, he said with relief, Dragon Master, if Senior Tsang Hao hears you, he will be very happy. Senior Huitong, Senior Tsang Hao is a person who likes peace and quiet. Just stay here and don't let anyone disturb him. Qin Chuan turned to look at Huitong. This is the first order I am giving you as the Dragon Master. Although Huitong was powerful, he had lost an extremely precious drop of dragon heart blood. His cultivation was showing signs of instability, and he would not be able to make any progress in the next few decades. Therefore, it was best for Huitong to stay in the Dragon Spirit Lake and focus on cultivating. Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Huitong was slightly stunned. Soon after, a complicated expression appeared on his face. He knelt on one knee and respectfully said to Qin Chuan, Thank you, Dragon Master. Qin Chuan went up to help Huitong up. He said to Huitong, As for Shiqing, I'll leave him here to be Senior's guard. With Qin Chuan's current cultivation and strength, it was very difficult for Shiqing, who was only at the early stage of foundation establishment, to be of any help to Qin Chuan. Instead, he would become a burden. Qin Chuan had already thought of arranging for Shiqing and Huitong to guard each other. Dragon Master, how confident are you in facing the Ancient Ones this time? Huitong had a certain understanding of what Qin Chuan was about to face. In his opinion, Qin Chuan would probably face a very big challenge this time. Qin Chuan smiled when he heard that. He said to Hui Tong, Senior, "You don't need to worry about that. I will do my best. Those with ulterior motives can forget about getting any benefits from me." Above the ruins of the Black Moon mountain range, Yi Ting stood in the air and looked down. He sighed. This is the Black Moon mountain range? The endless mountain range has now become a flat plain. What a surprise! The world is unpredictable. Who would have thought that something like this would happen? The gaze of Shimin Weiyang, who had come together with them, slightly changed. Thousands of years had passed. They had originally thought that Kagad would never see the light of day again, but they had never thought that Kagad would break through the seal in the end. Merely, at that time, their perseverance and belief had already dissipated completely. Only Ning Zhongtian still persisted in his belief of thousands of years. "Everyone, I'm here." Qian Wujin, who was tall and wearing a golden robe, slowly walked over and stood beside Yi Ting and Shimin Weiyang. "You are still the same. You like to wear gold and silver. You are more troublesome than women." Shimin Weiyang looked at Qian Wujin and sighed. "How many years has it been since we old fellows last met? Who knows? Anyway, every time we meet, that woman Qin Fenghua is always the last one to arrive. Being late is probably something engraved in every woman's bones. No matter how high their cultivation is, it is unavoidable." Qian Wujin smiled. "We probably won't even know when she dies. We will think that she is habitually late again." "Qian Wujin, I can smell the stench in your mouth from thousands of meters away." Qin Fenghua, who was wearing a thin veil, suddenly appeared beside Qian Wujin. She looked at Qian Wujin with a sharp gaze. It seemed that she hated Qian Wujin. "Ha ha ha, I was just casually speaking. Who doesn't know that you, Qin Fenghua, are the youngest among us? If someone is to die, it should be us old fellows who die first." Qian Wujin laughed, "However, even if you, Qin Fenghua, die without regrets. After all, your Qin clan has produced such an outstanding genius. Unlike us old fellows who have to personally nurture her, it is really hard for us." Chapter 801. When everyone heard Qian Wujin mention the geniuses of the Qin family, a subtle expression appeared on their faces. Although they hadn't been involved in worldly affairs for a long time, they still heard about some of the things that happened in recent years. The most famous genius of the Qin family was naturally Qin Chuan, who was now known as the savior of the world. However, this Qin Chuan didn't seem to have much of a sense of identity with the Qin family and had always been outside of the Qin family. "Qian Wujin, what do you mean?" Qin Fenghua's sharp gaze looked at Qian Wujin. She didn't feel that Qian Wujin's words were anything good. "I'm praising your bloodline. Can't you hear it?" Qian Wujin smiled. "Why do you always have such a cold face? Can't you smile more?" "I think you're courting death." Qin Fenghua angrily roared, and the spiritual energy in her body suddenly surged. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth engulfed and condensed into a ball in her palm, emitting a shocking energy fluctuation. "All right, everyone quiet down. Don't start a fight as soon as you see each other." Yi Ting took a step forward and stood in between Qin Fenghua and Qian Wujin, separating the two. They didn't come here today to compete with each other, but for an even bigger matter. "Humph." Qin Fenghua coldly snorted and dispersed the spirit qi condensed in his palm. Qian Wujin, on the other hand, had an indifferent smile on his face. The spirit qi on the surface of his body also dissipated, as if nothing had happened. The atmosphere between everyone became harmonious again. "Someone's coming." Shimin Weiyang looked into the distance and slightly narrowed her eyes. "It's that little guy from the Gao family." Just when Shimin Weiyang was speaking, the others also noticed the existence of Gaoan. Looking at Gaoan, who was slowly flying over, Yi Ting slightly frowned and said in a low voice, "Qin Chuan didn't come? Who knows?" Qian Wujin shrugged. "What does it matter if that little guy doesn't come?" Although Qin Chuan's reputation in the Star Dragon Federation was very big in their eyes, Qin Chuan was still a little guy. It was normal for Qin Chuan to not come to a meeting of their level. After all, not everyone was willing to stay together with a group of ancestors. Junior Gao En greets the seniors. Gao En stopped when he was 1,000 meters away from Yi Ting and the other three, and greeted them with a respectful tone. Shimin Weiyang looked at Gao En and said faintly, "Kid from the Gao family, come closer and talk." With Shimin Weiyang and the others' seniority, it wasn't excessive to call Gao En Gao family's boy. Gao En didn't mind at all. He very obediently walked forward and stood in front of everyone. "I heard that some time ago, Zerg wreaked havoc in the Star Dragon Federation. I wonder what the situation is now?" Qian Wujin looked at Gao En and chuckled. "Now that we old fellows have come out of seclusion, if there's anything you need us to do, feel free to ask." When Gao En heard Qian Wujin's words, he couldn't help but reveal a subtle expression. He said respectfully, "Speaking of which, there is indeed a matter that requires the help of the few seniors." Hearing this, Qian Wujin chuckled and asked Gao En, "Is it about recovering the air center?" "Don't worry. Leave it to us." Long before coming out of seclusion, the four of them had already communicated. This time, they wanted to set new rules after coming out of seclusion, so they had to do something to have the right to speak. Recovering the air center was the best place they could think of to help. However, to Qian Wujin's surprise, Gao En shook his head and replied, "Recovering the air center is a small matter. It's not worth mentioning. There's no need for the few seniors to do anything." Hearing Gao En use "a small matter" and "not worth mentioning" to describe recovering the air center, everyone's expressions couldn't help but become subtle. Now that Gao En had said that recovering the air center was a small matter not worth mentioning, it would be a bit difficult for them to make an issue out of it. "Then what is it that you want us to help you with?" Shimin Weiyang looked at Gao En. "You'd better make it clear. Don't let us old guys guess." Hearing this, Gao En's expression suddenly became serious. His words were very fierce. When the Star Dragon Federation was invaded by Zerg and the human race was facing the crisis of extinction, all the righteous people rushed to Star Dragon City and sacrificed themselves to resist Zerg's invasion. On the other hand, not only did Sky City not help Star Dragon City, but they even established their own country when Star Dragon City was in danger. They betrayed the Star Dragon Federation and the entire human race. Now that Zerg's invasion is a thing of the past, but Sky City's establishment of its own country has not been resolved. If we don't severely punish Sky City, then who will be willing to contribute and sacrifice when the Star Dragon Federation is in danger in the future? Therefore, we must severely punish these traitors. When everyone heard Gao En's impassioned and righteous words, their expressions became a little gloomy. They came to see Gao En today to be a lobbyist for Sky City, but they didn't expect that before they could speak, Gao En would speak first and use this method to shut their mouths. "Gao En, some things can't be looked at on the surface. Although Sky City's actions are despicable, think about it. If Star Dragon City were defeated, wouldn't the human race be destroyed? And Sky City's actions just happened to leave a spark for the human race, leaving a glimmer of hope, right? There are two sides to every coin." Qian Wujin's words seemed to be fair, but in fact, he was biased towards Sky City in every way. Gao En was not surprised that Qian Wujin would say such words. He looked at the others and asked, "I wonder if the other seniors have anything to say?" Hearing this, Shimin Weiyang said lightly, "In my opinion, people will make mistakes. Making mistakes is not terrible, but making mistakes again and again is terrible. In my opinion, since it's Sky City's first offense, why don't we give them a chance to turn over a new leaf? It just so happens that we need someone to be the vanguard to recover the air center. Why don't we let Sky City send someone?" I think Shimin Weiyang's words are very reasonable. Let Sky City send someone to be the vanguard to recover the air center. If Sky City has another problem in this matter, then it's them giving up the chance to turn over a new leaf. It won't be too late for us to punish them then. I don't have anything to say. Qin Fenghua was as cold as ever and didn't want to say anything about this. It turns out that the seniors all have the same opinion. It seems that you've already discussed it. Gowan laughed. Since the seniors already have an idea, why did you come here to see me today? Hearing Gowan's words, everyone's expression changed again. Chapter 802. Kid from the Gao family, what do you mean by this? Shimin Weiyang looked at Gowan with a gloomy gaze. His expression was extremely ugly. They came into being to set the rules, not to be ridiculed. Gao En smiled slightly and said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, whatever seniors think I mean, that's what I mean. Seeing that Gowan didn't give any explanation, Shimin Weiyang's expression suddenly became even uglier. Just as he was about to say something, Yi Ting stopped him, indicating that he shouldn't be too impulsive. Yi Ting took a step forward, looked at Gowan calmly and asked, "Your attitude towards us is a bit strange. Is it because you think that us old guys aren't as powerful as that little thing?" Yi Ting didn't say who the little thing was, but everyone knew very well that the little thing Yi Ting was talking about was Qin Chuan. He was also the so-called strongest person in the Star Dragon Federation. Seniors, I don't understand why you are targeting me here. Shouldn't you be targeting Sky City? Gowan looked straight at Yi Ting. Is it because Sky City has your old friends that they should be easily forgiven? We don't mean to target you, nor do we want to easily forgive Sky City. We have clearly expressed our opinion that Sky City's crime doesn't warrant death. They can be ordered to be the vanguard to attack the center of the Kunlun field to atone for their crimes. Yi Ting looked at Gowan indifferently and said indifferently, "But you, why do you have to kill Sky City? Is it because of the personal grudge between Qin Chuan and Shangguan Yuanhao? As the chairman of the Federation, you should stand on the side of justice and not mix your personal feelings into it." Hearing Yi Ting's sanctimonious words, Gao En sneered in his heart, but his expression didn't change. He said to Yi Ting, "Since seniors feel that Sky City can make up for their crimes by committing such a serious crime, why do you oppose Qin Chuan breaking the Immortal Trap Talisman Array and releasing the Demon Clan seniors? These are two different things. How can you generalize them?" At the mention of the Immortal Imprisoning Talisman Array, Qian Wujin couldn't help but interrupt. No matter what, those sealed old demons absolutely couldn't be released. The Immortal Trap Talisman formation cannot be broken. The demons cannot be released. Shimin Weiyang said solemnly, "This is the bottom line. It cannot be crossed." Seeing that everyone was so determined, Gowan seemed to have understood something and asked, "Seniors, I'm afraid that the reason you came out this time is not only to unify all the voices in the Star Dragon Federation, but also to take down the Boundary Mountain and the Demon Realm." Hearing this, Shimin Weiyang's expression did not change. She said calmly, "This world is originally a whole. After being divided into 3 parts for so many years, it's time for them to be unified. At that time, as the chairman of the Federation, your authority will become greater. Isn't this a good thing for you?" Hearing Shimin Weiyang's words, Gowan chuckled, "I understand. You don't want Qin Chuan to break open the Immortal Trap Talisman Array and release the Demon Clan seniors because you are worried that those Demon Clan seniors will become an obstacle for you to unify this world." "We have never feared anyone," Qin Fenghua said indifferently. "After those old guys are released, they might not even have their souls left. What is there to be afraid of? In that case, why don't we let Qin Chuan get what he wants?" Gowan said to everyone, "I can take a step back and let Sky City make up for it. Seniors, you can also take a step back and let Qin Chuan break the seal and release the Demon Clan seniors. How about this?" "Gowan, I think you are mistaken about one thing." Yi Ting looked deeply at Gowan. "We didn't come here today to negotiate with you. We came here to inform you. You only need to do as we say." Seeing that he could not make Gowan bow his head in a normal way, Yi Ting had no choice but to use strength to suppress him. Seniors, you are really awe-inspiring. When Kargad broke the seal, you didn't show up. When Zerg wreaked havoc on the Star Dragon Federation, you didn't do anything either. Now that all the dangers have been resolved and the situation is calm, you guys actually jumped out. What great authority! At this moment, a mocking laugh sounded in everyone's ears. Qinchuan's figure slowly walked over from afar with a playful smile on his face and an unrestrained expression on his face. Although this was the first time Yi Ting and the other three had seen Qinchuan, they guessed Qinchuan's identity at first glance. The expressions on their faces also became unfathomable, and no one knew what they were thinking at this moment. Qinchuan. Qin Fenghua looked at Qinchuan indifferently and asked, "Do you still consider yourself a member of the Qin family?" Hearing Qin Fenghua's question, Qinchuan smiled and asked back, "Senior, do you still consider yourself a human? When the human race was in trouble, did you think that you were already a god and not a human?" Hearing Qinchuan's words, everyone's expression became a little strange. No one thought that not only did Qinchuan not answer Qin Fenghua's question, but he also ruthlessly mocked Qin Fenghua. This was completely not putting Qin Fenghua in his eyes. As the ancestor of the Qin family, Qin Fenghua was not placed in Qinchuan's eyes. Then, one could imagine how terrible their status and image in Qinchuan's eyes were. "You really have big guts," Qin Fenghua angrily shouted. He raised his hand and waved his palm toward Qinchuan. The wind from his palm whistled, and endless spiritual energy surged and gathered, turning into a palm that blotted out the sky and the sun, slapping toward Qinchuan. When facing Qin Fenghua's furious strike, Qinchuan didn't dodge nor did he take any defensive measures. He actually forcefully endured this strike with his body, and it shocked everyone present. Qinchuan forcefully endured this strike, and his expression couldn't help but become slightly unsightly. He shot his gaze at Qin Fenghua, who had a gloomy expression, and said coldly, "Qin Fenghua, I endured this palm strike on behalf of my mother. From today onwards, my mother has nothing to do with your Qin family, and I, Qinchuan, have nothing to do with your Qin family as well. If you still want to make a move against me, then don't blame me for being merciless." Hearing Qinchuan's words, the flames of rage in Qin Fenghua's heart grew even more, and he raised his hand with the intention of attacking once more. But this time, he was stopped by Yi Ting. "Qinchuan, do you really want to go against us?" Yi Ting frowned as he looked at Qinchuan. "This isn't beneficial to you at all." Qinchuan shook his head when he heard this, and he said to Yi Ting, "You're wrong. It isn't that I'm going against all of you, but all of you are going against me. I don't think that all of you who've lived for a few thousand years are nobler than us. We've painstakingly worked hard to obtain our current situation. On what basis do all of you jump out and want to pluck our peaches? All of you want me to be obedient? Fine, then use your fists to beat me into submission, and beat me until I don't dare go against all of you. No matter if it's 1 of you, 4 of you, or even 5 of you come at me together, I'll take it all." Chapter 803. Is this your attitude? Yi Ting took a deep look at Qinchuan, then looked at Gowan. Without waiting for him to speak, Gowan had already taken the initiative to retreat to Qinchuan's side, making his position clear. Seeing Gowan's actions, Yi Ting sneered and said angrily, "Good, very good. The 2 of you are really good. Since that's the case, we have nothing more to say. Let's see how strong you are. Let this old man see how capable you, the strongest person in the new generation, are. You guys don't have to do anything. I'll teach him a lesson." Before Yi Ting's voice fell, he had already launched an attack at Qinchuan. Yi Ting didn't seem to make any moves, but Qinchuan's figure had already been sent flying, as if he had suffered a great impact. At the same time, Yi Ting's figure disappeared in an instant. The next moment, he appeared behind Qinchuan and raised his hand to slap Qinchuan's back. Sizzle! Yi Ting's slap wasn't able to hit Qinchuan. Instead, it hit a thunderbolt force. The moment this thunderbolt force came into contact with Yi Ting, it drilled into Yi Ting's body. Seeing this, Yi Ting snorted coldly. The spiritual energy in his body trembled, and the all-pervasive thunderbolt force was expelled from his body. Sword, come! Qinchuan's angry roar sounded above Yi Ting's head. The Milky Way sword crossed the void and pierced straight toward Yi Ting's head. Under the support of the Milky Way sword intent, the incomparably sharp sword aura bloomed with an unstoppable momentum. Even with Yi Ting's strength, he definitely didn't dare to be hit by the Milky Way sword. His figure flashed and appeared 1,000 meters away. In another flash, he appeared behind Qinchuan. He raised his hand and put his index and middle fingers together, then pierced toward the back of Qinchuan's head. Whoosh! Qinchuan moved like lightning, dodging Yi Ting's attack. At the same time, the Milky Way sword flew over again, colliding with Yi Ting's 2 fingers. Suddenly, an extremely terrifying energy fluctuation erupted, surging out in all directions. The spectators had no choice but to retreat from the impact of this energy. They only stopped after retreating several thousand meters. Shimin Weiyang gazed at Qinchuan's figure from afar and said in a low voice, "Truly a formidable kid. He's able to fight with Yi Ting at such a young age. Formidable." Although they were now standing on the opposite side of Qinchuan, this did not prevent them from acknowledging Qinchuan's strength. "Humph, you only have the advantage of the Milky Way sword." Qian Wujin coldly snorted. "If you don't have the Milky Way sword, do you think he can be Yi Ting's opponent?" Although these old fellows had not appeared in the world for many years, they had heard of the dazzling sword god Su Inha, who had appeared out of nowhere. They knew that the Milky Way sword in Qinchuan's hand came from sword god Su Inha. It could at least increase Qinchuan's battle prowess by 30%. Luck is also a part of strength. The Milky Way sword had been lost outside for thousands of years, and no one had been able to find it. However, Qinchuan was able to bring back the Milky Way sword in one move. This proves that Qinchuan's body has great luck. Qin Fenghua did not belittle Qinchuan just because Qinchuan had previously offended her. The reason why these old fellows were able to survive until now was not only because of their strength and endurance, but also because of their calmness and rationality. They had a clear understanding of people and matters. No matter what, I think his strength is equivalent to us. If we attack him at the same time, he will not have any chance to turn the situation around. Shimin Weiyang confidently said, "In this world, there is absolutely no one who can stop us." The battle between Qinchuan and Yi Ting was still continuing. However, both of them had not used their full strength. Currently, they were still in the probing stage. At first, Yi Ting did not think that Qinchuan had the strength to contend with him. He thought that the evaluation of Qinchuan by the world was somewhat exaggerated. However, the fact proved that Qinchuan was really very strong. This youngster who had not even been alive for 30 years and had not even cultivated for 10 years absolutely had the strength to contend with him. When he realized this, Yi Ting's mood wasn't good. It was even somewhat vile. He hated geniuses. Any type of genius was within the scope of his hatred. And the best way to make him feel better was to eliminate geniuses. 3,000 leaves! Yi Ting shouted in a low voice. He raised his hand and waved. 3,000 leaves flew out from his sleeve and shot towards Qinchuan. These leaves surrounded Qinchuan from all directions and then stuck to Qinchuan's body. They wanted to wrap around Qinchuan. Upon seeing this, Qinchuan immediately used lightning escape to leave the center of the leaves' encirclement. However, what he didn't expect was that the lightning escape that had always worked was actually ineffective at this crucial moment. "Do you think I will let you use the same move a second time?" Yi Ting sneered. The trapping effect of his 3,000 leaves was to seal everything. Qinchuan wanting to use lightning escape to escape was simply a fool's dream. The instant the lightning escape lost its effect, the 3,000 leaves wrapped around Qinchuan, forming a round ball. Upon seeing this scene, Qian Wujin chuckled from afar and said to everyone, "The battle is over. Although this kid's performance is not bad, that's all there is to it." As he spoke, Qian Wujin looked at Gaoen and said, "Gaoen, it's not too late for you to turn back now." Gaoen pursed his lips and didn't say anything. His gaze was fixed on the round ball. He didn't believe that Qinchuan would be defeated so easily. Roar! Suddenly, a dragon's roar resounded in the heavens and the earth. The sphere that tightly wrapped around Qinchuan shattered with a bang at the instant the dragon's roar resounded. An azure lightning dragon flew out from within and spat out a ball of dragon's breath at Yi Ting. Yi Ting didn't expect Qinchuan to be able to break through the seal of the 3,000 leaves, and was hit by the dragon's breath. The blazing flames combined with the violent power of lightning almost instantly broke through the defense of Yi Ting's magic robe and invaded his body, causing Yi Ting's expression to instantly turn ugly. "Damn it!" Yi Ting roared furiously. His entire body glowed brightly, and his imposing manner was like a rainbow. His aura instantly soared like the scorching sun and emitted a shocking might. He'd actually been forced to release his complete form by Qinchuan. To someone like Yi Ting, who'd lived for nearly 10,000 years, lifespan was an extremely precious existence. Moreover, releasing his complete form would burn his lifespan. Therefore, unless he had no other choice, he would absolutely not release his complete form. From this, it could be seen how terrifying Qinchuan's dragon's breath was. It actually forced Yi Ting to burn his precious lifespan to release his complete form to resist it. On the other hand, the nearby spectators were dumbstruck when they saw this scene. None of them had imagined that Yi Ting would actually be forced by Qinchuan to the point of releasing his complete form. This short instant would probably burn away a few years of Yi Ting's lifespan, and to them who didn't have many years left to live, this was simply more unbearable than directly killing them. Chapter 804. Bastard, I'm going to kill you. At this moment, Yi Ting couldn't care less about his demeanor. The burning of his lifespan had caused him to fall into a frenzy. The spiritual energy in his body was like a torrent as it poured towards Qinchuan, engulfing the entire sky. Facing Yi Ting's fury, Qinchuan appeared to be extremely rational. He opened his mouth and spat out several balls of dragon's breath towards Yi Ting, while he relied on the agility of his movement technique to move around Yi Ting's attacks. It was as if he was dancing on the tip of a knife. The slightest bit of carelessness would cause him to fall into an incomparably miserable state. Yi Ting, who had already tasted the pain of Qinchuan's dragon's breath, chose to dodge the dragon's breath that Qinchuan spat out again without hesitation. At this moment, the Milky Way sword suddenly appeared beside him, blocking his escape route. At this moment, facing the threat of the Milky Way sword and Qinchuan's dragon's breath, Yi Ting had to make a choice and forcefully endure one of the attacks. At this critical moment, a palm that blotted out the sky suddenly appeared beside Yi Ting, blocking the threat from the Milky Way sword for Yi Ting and taking the opportunity to take Yi Ting away from Qinchuan's attack range. The person who had saved Yi Ting was none other than Qin Fenghua. Enough! Qin Fenghua looked at Qinchuan, and his tone was slightly cold. "Let's stop here." Hearing Qin Fenghua's words, Yi Ting's face was filled with shame. He really didn't expect that Qinchuan would actually be so difficult to deal with. He was actually almost injured by Qinchuan. To him, this was simply a great humiliation, especially when there were so many people watching the battle. This was completely a public execution. Although the others' feelings weren't as complicated and excited as Yi Ting, they weren't in a good mood either. Their expressions were also very ugly. The few of them had similar strength. Since Yi Ting had been defeated by Qinchuan, then if they were to face Qinchuan, their end might not be any better than Yi Ting's. When they thought that these old fellows who had lived for thousands of years couldn't even defeat a little brat, they felt their faces heat up. How awe-inspiring! You're the ones who want to fight, and you're the ones who don't. Do you really think I'm playing around with you? Qin Chuan sneered as he transformed into his human form. His gaze was filled with disdain as he looked at Qin Fenghua's group of 4. Originally, he was still somewhat fearful of these ancient elders. However, after exchanging blows with Yi Ting, he gained confidence in his heart. These ancient elders were simply no match for him in a one-on-one battle. Originally, Qin Chuan was not so strong. But after absorbing over 100 drops of dragon heart blood that Song Hao had kept for nearly 10,000 years, his strength had soared once again, and he had reached the middle nascent soul stage. Now, he could truly be called invincible in this world. Qin Chuan, don't go too far. Qin Fenghua said coldly. No matter what, we are still your seniors. Previously, Qin Chuan's attitude towards Qin Fenghua wasn't good. Qin Fenghua didn't hesitate to teach Qin Chuan a lesson. Now that Qin Chuan had displayed his powerful strength, Qin Fenghua didn't attack Qin Chuan because of his bad attitude. This was the change brought about by powerful strength. Qin Chuan smiled and asked, "Then do you seniors still want to continue fighting?" Hearing Qin Chuan's words, the expressions on Qin Fenghua and the others' faces became extremely strange. With their strength, unless they attacked together, it would be very difficult for them to defeat Qin Chuan in a one-on-one fight. If they attacked together, it would be equivalent to them losing all their face. Furthermore, no one could guarantee that Qin Chuan wouldn't risk everything and drag one of them down with him in a desperate situation. Qin Chuan, other things can be discussed, but breaking the immortal entrapment charm array and releasing the demon clan absolutely cannot be done. Qin Fenghua's expression was solemn. Existences like Azure Dragon Song Hao are very few among the sealed demon clan. After nearly 10,000 years of accumulation, their hatred towards our human clan must have reached an extremely high level. If you release them like this, they will definitely launch a crazy revenge on our human clan regardless of the consequences. At that time, the demon clan's strength will definitely surpass our human clan's. No one can guarantee that the demon clan won't have any ill intentions towards us. I think you should understand the logic behind this. Hearing Qin Fenghua's words, Qin Chuan looked deeply at Qin Fenghua and said to Qin Fenghua, "Senior, regardless of whether these sealed demon clan will seek revenge on us or not, I will break the immortal entrapment charm array and return them their freedom. We have been wrong for so many years, we can't continue to be wrong." Hearing this, Qian Wujin frowned fiercely and asked Qin Chuan, "Must you insist on having your way?" Qin Chuan said firmly, "It must be done." This gathering ended on a sour note. Not only did Qin Fenghua and the other 3 fail to deter Gao En and Qin Chuan, but they also failed to resolve the matter of Sky City. Qin Chuan also did not gain any benefits, so the matter of breaking the seal of the immortal entrapment charm array had to be postponed. Therefore, the trip to Sky City was put on the agenda. Qin Chuan looked at Lu Zi beside him and said helplessly, "Why do you have to follow me? Today, I saw the battle between you and the Ancient Ones from afar. Although you have the upper hand, but it is still somewhat difficult to win. Moreover, you are only facing one Ancient One. If those few old fellows throw away their face and deal with you together, I am afraid you will suffer losses. With me following you, even if I can't help you, at least I can help you call for help." Lu Zi said seriously, but Qin Chuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Those Ancient Ones seemed to be of the same spirit and branch, but in fact, each of them had their own plans. If not because of these various concerns, perhaps they would have already swarmed up today. It was precisely because he saw this point that Qin Chuan had the courage to walk outside. Lu Zi raised her hand to tidy up the beautiful hair in front of her forehead and said in a low voice, "Moreover, I know that Yaorao is coming soon." At that time, you will definitely take out some time to accompany her. Let me stay by your side for a while during this period of time. Hearing Lu Zi's words, Qin Chuan finally couldn't say a word of refusal. And just when Qin Chuan and Lu Zi set out for Sky City, the news about the battle between Qin Chuan and Yi Ting also spread to Sky City. Jing Yu was sitting upright on the praying mat, and looking at the information in his hand. His eyes flashed with a touch of subtle color. Then he asked Shangguan Yuanhao, who was serving beside him, "Is this your enemy? How did you provoke such a genius at that time?" Hearing Jing Yu's words, Shangguan Yuanhao said in a low voice, "I killed his parents." Jing Yu's face revealed a touch of understanding, and said indifferently, "So that's how it is, cutting the weeds without removing the roots. They will grow again when the spring breeze blows." Shangguan Yuanhao looked ashamed, and said to Jing Yu, "Master, this matter is caused by me alone. I won't implicate Sky City." Having heard what was said, Jing Yu took a meaningful glance at Shangguan Yuanhao. "Yuanhao, don't use such words to test my attitude. Since you are my disciple, I will naturally protect you. I will naturally deal with Qin Chuan." Chapter 805. In the training room, Zhou Lin was meditating with her legs crossed. The door to the training room slowly opened and Si Tang walked in. He glanced at Zhou Lin, who was meditating, and casually placed the information on the table. He said to Zhou Lin, "If you have time, come and take a look at this. It has something to do with Qin Chuan." Upon hearing Si Tang's words, Zhou Lin subconsciously stopped practicing her kung fu. She stood up and walked to the table to pick up the report. After reading the contents of the report, a complicated look appeared on her face. She said softly, "He has really become more and more powerful." Si Tang sighed and said, "When he first entered the center of Kunlun's field, I thought that he was just an ant that could be easily crushed. I did not expect him to grow to such a frightening level in the blink of an eye. If he had not been treated unfairly in the center of Kunlun's field, he might not have reached such heights today. This is probably a blessing in disguise." Regardless of whether it was fighting Zerg's army of 300,000, fighting Kargad, or defeating the Ancient Ones today, any one of these things was shocking enough. If a person could do something like this in their lifetime, they would be proud of it for the rest of their life. However, Qin Chuan had done all of these in just a few days. After sighing, Si Tang had no choice but to face her current situation. She said to Zhou Lin with a complicated tone, "Master summoned me again today and asked about my training. He even wanted to test my realm and strength. I feel that we can't keep this a secret for much longer." Hearing Si Tang's words, Zhou Lin's expression changed slightly. She asked, "Shangguan Yuanhao has already begun to suspect you?" Si Tang nodded and said, "If Master did not come out yesterday, I'm afraid that he would have summoned me again today." As Si Tang spoke, she looked at Zhou Lin and asked, "Can you contact Qin Chuan?" Upon hearing Si Tang's words, Zhou Lin understood what Si Tang was trying to do. Si Tang wanted to borrow Qin Chuan's strength to deal with Shangguan Yuanhao so that she could escape. However, now that Shangguan Yuanhao's master had come out of seclusion, Zhou Lin did not want to let Qin Chuan take the risk without knowing how strong his master was. Moreover, with her current relationship with Qin Chuan, he might not be willing to help her. Thinking of this, Zhou Lin's expression couldn't help but become a little gloomy. She whispered, "Do you think my relationship with him will still be as good as before?" Back then, her father plotted against Qin Chuan. Her former master was Qin Chuan's enemy who killed his parents. She did not lend a helping hand when Qin Chuan needed it the most. Now that she was in prison, what right did she have to ask Qin Chuan to help her escape? Hearing Zhou Lin's question, Si Tang was slightly stunned. Then, a bitter look appeared on her face. She stopped talking about this matter and changed the topic. "Right now, we can only take one step at a time. If we are forced into a corner, we can only try to escape from Sky Castle. It's fine for me, but what about you? Your father is still in Master's hands. What should we do? There will always be a way when the time comes. You don't have to worry about this. You just have to protect yourself. Zhou Lin was obviously anxious about Zhou Meng. However, she also knew that there was no point in being anxious. Seeing that Zhou Lin was unwilling to talk about this matter, Si Tang did not say anything else. Just as he was about to talk about something else, his optical computer suddenly lit up. When he saw the message received by his optical computer, his face turned pale. Master wants to see me. In the study room, Si Tang slowly walked to the table and looked at Shangguan Yuanhao, who was standing with his back facing her. She then shouted respectfully, "Master, I'm here." Hearing Si Tang's words, Shangguan Yuanhao did not immediately turn around. Instead, he pointed at the sunset outside the window and asked Si Tang, what do you think of the scenery outside the window? Isn't it beautiful?" Hearing this, Si Tang subconsciously looked at the sunset outside the window. Looking at the city that was dyed orange by the sunset, she pursed her lips and replied, "The sunset is beautiful. The city is beautiful too." "That's right. The scenery is so beautiful. Who wouldn't want to look at it for the rest of their lives?" Shangguan Yuanhao sighed. He slowly turned around and looked at Si Tang. With a complicated tone, he said, "Can you understand my frustration and helplessness when I see such a beautiful scenery?" Si Tang's face changed slightly. She said softly, "Master, I don't understand what you are talking about." "No, you understand. However, you don't want to understand. You are afraid." Shangguan Yuanhao looked deeply at Si Tang. "I am also afraid because your opponent is too strong. Qinchuan's growth is much faster than I expected. It is also much more frightening." Hearing Shangguan Yuanhao mention Qinchuan, Si Tang said, "Master, so what if Qinchuan is strong? You still have a master behind you." It is better to rely on yourself than on others. No matter how strong my master is, it is his ability, not mine." Shangguan Yuanhao slowly walked around the desk and walked in front of Si Tang. He said softly, "If I want to live, I need to rely on myself. You are my biggest support now." Si Tang's face changed again. She forced a smile and said, "Master, what support do I have? Actually, I secretly went to see Zhou Lin once. She is still a virgin to this day. You have not consummated your marriage with her, nor have you dual cultivated with her." Shangguan Yuanhao looked at Si Tang with a sharp gaze. "I have been giving you a chance. I hope that you will realize your mistakes and turn back. However, you have disappointed me." Hearing Shangguan Yuanhao's words, Si Tang finally could not take it anymore. She wanted to retreat. However, her body had already been restrained by Shangguan Yuanhao. She could not move at all. "Why are you doing this? Why do you want to disappoint me?" Shangguan Yuanhao looked gloomily at Si Tang. "Isn't it good to advance to the original infant stage and willingly sacrifice your life and cultivation for me?" Si Tang looked at Shangguan Yuanhao in shock. She said in disbelief, "Master, that's right. It is exactly what you are thinking. Be bold and say it." Shangguan Yuanhao said coldly, "The technique that you are practicing is the cauldron technique that I gave you. As long as you advance to the original infant stage, I will be able to absorb your cultivation and lifespan to increase my own cultivation and lifespan. When that happens, I will be able to advance to the complete original infant stage and become the strongest person in the world." Back then, Qinchuan's father discovered that I was practicing this evil technique. That was why he cut ties with me. I was worried that he would spread the news and ruin my reputation. Therefore, I decided to kill him. Chapter 806. Si Tang was shocked. She did not expect Shangguan Yuanhao to practice such an evil technique. "You've been preparing for this day ever since you took me in as your disciple?" Si Tang could not believe it. Was their relationship as master and disciple all fake? If Shangguan Yuanhao had been acting all this time, then his acting was way too realistic. Shangguan Yuanhao laughed coldly and asked, "Are you stupid? Could it be that you still haven't figured out how your senior brothers before you died? Didn't you realize that every time one of your seniors died, my strength and cultivation level would increase tremendously?" Si Taing's expression changed completely when she heard Shangguan Yuanhao's words. She was completely stunned. She opened her mouth but could not say a word. She could not even make a sound. "Your seniors have been so cooperative with my plan. Why do you have to create trouble for me at such a crucial moment?" Shangguan Yuanhao snorted. "Do you think that I can't do anything to you just because you haven't cultivated with Zhou Lin and advanced to the original infant stage? How naive. Today, I'm going to suck your cultivation level and lifespan dry. Then, I'll cultivate with Zhou Lin and suck her lifespan and cultivation level dry. Although it's a little troublesome and the effect is barely satisfactory, I can't wait any longer. No. No, no." Si Taing finally regained her senses under the threat of death. She screamed in fear. "Don't you think it's too late to say no now?" Ever since Si Taing left, Zhou Lin had been feeling uneasy. She felt that something bad was about to happen. She could not calm down in the cultivation room. After hesitating for a while, she decided to take the risk and leave. Buzz. The door to the cultivation room opened. Zhou Lin wanted to leave but was stopped by 2 guards. "Miss Zhou, you can't leave the cultivation room." In the past, there were no guards at the entrance of the cultivation room. However, 2 guards suddenly appeared at the entrance today. This change caused Zhou Lin to feel even more uneasy. She didn't hesitate to attack the 2 guards and cleanly killed them. Whoosh! After killing the 2 guards, Zhou Lin quickly rushed towards the place that Si Taing had told her about Zhou Meng being held captive. She quickly found the place where Zhou Meng was being held captive. However, the place was heavily guarded. It would be difficult for her to rescue Zhou Meng. However, she had already killed the 2 guards. She had to try no matter how difficult it was. Inside the cell, Zhou Meng was resting with his eyes closed. Suddenly, he heard the sound of a fierce battle outside. Spiritual energy fluctuations raged. Unfortunately, he couldn't speak or move, so there was no way for him to clearly understand what was happening outside. Just as Zhou Meng was wondering what was going on outside, the door to the cell was suddenly opened from the outside. When he saw the familiar figure covered in blood, Zhou Meng's eyes widened. His face was filled with excitement. "Ka ka ka!" Zhou Lin stepped forward and removed the torture equipment on Zhou Meng. She said to Zhou Meng, "Father, Shangguan Yuanhao has realized that something is amiss. He might have already taken action against Si Taing. We have to escape now." After hearing Zhou Lin's words, Zhou Meng, who had already regained his ability to speak, asked Zhou Lin with concern, "Are you injured?" "I'm fine. It's all their blood." Zhou Lin helped Zhou Meng up from the ground. Just as they were about to walk out of the cell, Zhou Meng's legs gave way and he fell to the ground. "Shangguan Yuanhao destroyed my cultivation. He also broke the tendons in my arms and legs. I am now a cripple." After hearing Zhou Meng's words, Zhou Lin's expression changed. She had only just noticed that Zhou Meng had lost all his cultivation. He was now a cripple. How could he do that? Zhou Lin cried. "He is a demon. A demon? Lin, don't worry about me. Leave now." Zhou Meng wanted to lift his hand to wipe away Zhou Lin's tears. However, he could not lift his hand. "Don't be impulsive. Leave now." Now that Zhou Lin had gone on a killing spree, if Shangguan Yuanhao found out about this, he would definitely not let Zhou Lin go. Therefore, Zhou Lin had to leave Sky City as soon as possible. Once Shangguan Yuanhao realized what was going on, she would be done for. Zhou Lin did not say anything. She extended her hand to help Zhou Meng up. She carried Zhou Meng on her back and walked out. When she arrived at the courtyard, She took out the number 9 Skywalker flying shuttle from her storage ring. She helped Zhou Meng onto the flying shuttle. Then, she took off a corpse's clothes from the ground and tied them together. After that, she activated the flying shuttle and flew into the sky. Although Sky City had a ban on flying, and it would be difficult to leave through the air, Zhou Lin did not care about anything else as she wanted to leave Sky City as soon as possible. Buzz. Shangguan Yuanhao, who was cultivating, slowly opened his eyes. He looked at the message on his optical computer. A cold look flashed across his eyes. What a sharp observation. You actually chose this time to escape. But even if you run to the ends of the earth, I won't be afraid. After saying that, Shangguan Yuanhao looked at the dried-up corpse under his feet and sneered. Don't worry, I'll soon send your new wife to the underworld to reunite with you. Whoosh! Zhou Lin was flying in the sky with the number 9 Skywalker. On the way, she encountered a few flying shuttles that came to intercept her, but they were all easily overtaken by her. The flying shuttle in front of you, please stop immediately. Otherwise, we will shoot you down. The patrol of Sky City gave a final warning to Zhou Lin. If Zhou Lin insisted on doing what she wanted to do, then they would have no choice but to use force on her. However, Zhou Lin completely ignored the patrol's warning. Not only did she not stop, but she also increased the speed of the number 9 Skywalker to the max. Like a purple lightning bolt, she rushed out of Sky City. Bang bang bang! The patrol started to fire at Zhou Lin, but the number 9 Skywalker had an anti-lock function. The patrol's fire couldn't even touch the number 9 Skywalker's tail. Under the heavy encirclement of the patrols, Zhou Lin finally drove the 9th Skywalker out of Sky City's territory. At this moment, Zhou Lin's heart finally calmed down. As long as she had a bit more time, they would be safe. But just as Zhou Lin's lips curled up into a smile, Zhou Meng, who was behind her, suddenly spat out a mouthful of black blood. It emitted a very strong stench, and his entire body was weakened to the extreme. Chapter 807. Zhou Lin sensed Zhou Meng's abnormality behind her and subconsciously turned around to take a look. When she saw the large amount of black blood at the side of Zhou Meng's mouth, she was immediately shocked and hurriedly asked, "Father, what happened to you?" "Don't worry about me." Zhou Meng looked at Zhou Lin's anxious face. "I'm fine." "How can you be fine in this state?" Zhou Lin stopped the 9th Skywalker and turned around to check on Zhou Meng's body. However, she could not find anything wrong with Zhou Meng's body. Everything seemed normal. It was extremely strange. "Father, tell me, what did Shangguan Yuanhao do to you?" Zhou Lin asked with a trembling voice. "Are you deliberately not telling me?" Hearing this, Zhou Meng smiled and said to Zhou Lin, "Shangguan Yuanhao planted a restriction in my body. As long as I leave Sky City, I will suffer a backlash from the restriction. If I tell you this, will you still be able to bring me away with peace of mind?" "Father, I'll bring you back now." Zhou Lin raised her hand and wiped away the tears at the corner of her eyes. She had to save her father. "Don't go back. I can't be saved now. Moreover, I'm already a cripple. What's the point of living?" Zhou Meng stopped Zhou Lin from acting rashly. "This time, you have to listen to me. Hurry up and leave. The further, the better. I don't want to die in Sky City." Hearing Zhou Meng's words, Zhou Lin's tears fell like rain. She sobbed uncontrollably. She really did not know what sins she had committed in her previous life. Why did she have to go through so many hardships and tribulations in this life? Her family and friends were all leaving her. Was there any place left for her in this world? Boom! An extremely shocking aura shot up from Sky City and headed straight for Zhou Lin and Zhou Meng. Sensing this familiar aura, Zhou Lin and Zhou Meng's expressions changed. Shangguan Yuanhao was here. Furthermore, Shangguan Yuanhao's aura seemed to have become even stronger than before. He must have done something to see tying. Otherwise, his strength would not have increased so much. Lin Lin, hurry up and leave. Zhou Meng realized that danger was approaching. He hurriedly urged Zhou Lin to leave. Zhou Lin once again activated the ninth celestial and rushed into the distance. However, the ninth celestial's speed couldn't compare to Shangguan Yuanhao's. It wouldn't take long for him to catch up to them. Zhou Lin looked ahead with a determined gaze, gritted her teeth, and said in a low voice, "Even if I die, I want to die far away from Sky City." In the sky, the chase between Shangguan Yuanhao and Zhou Lin had already lasted for 2 hours. The distance between them had shrunk from over 1,000 li to less than 100 li. Shangguan Yuanhao was neither too fast nor too slow. He appeared to be very relaxed and calm. However, Zhou Lin was unable to hold on any longer. To be exact, it should be Zhou Meng who was unable to hold on any longer. During these 2 hours, Zhou Meng had vomited blood more than once. Every time he vomited blood, his aura would weaken a little. This time, after vomiting blood, Zhou Meng's aura became very weak. It was as if he had drifted away from this world and could die at any time. "Father, hold on a little longer." Tears blurred Zhou Lin's eyes. The pain of losing her loved one almost caused her to collapse. Her enemy was right behind her, but she couldn't take revenge. There was nothing more torturous than this in the world. At this moment, she finally understood how difficult it was for Qin Chuan back then. Zhou Meng leaned against Zhou Lin's back as he gazed at the side of Zhou Lin's face with blurry eyes. A hint of regret and remorse flashed across his aged face. If the heavens gave him another chance, he would definitely leave Sky City with Zhou Lin without any hesitation and go wherever Zhou Lin wanted to go. No matter who Zhou Lin liked, he would fully support Zhou Lin's choice. He would silently stand behind her and watch her live a happy life. Unfortunately, there was no if in this world. All of his thoughts were just unrealistic fantasies. He could only feel regret. Lin Lin. Zhou Meng wanted to say sorry to Zhou Lin at the last moment of his life. He wasn't a good father. However, before he could finish his sentence, his life force had completely disappeared from his body. Even his soul had been destroyed. "Father," Zhou Lin sensed that Zhou Meng had left behind her. She was about to break down. She hated Shangguan Yuanhao to the core. It was Shangguan Yuanhao who had caused a rift between them. It was also Shangguan Yuanhao who had caused her father's death and ruined her family. At the same time, she hated herself. She hated herself for being too hesitant. She hated herself for not realizing that something was wrong with Shangguan Yuanhao earlier. She hated herself for not being able to take Zhou Meng and leave Sky City earlier. She hated herself for not being able to, Zhou Meng is dead? What a pity! How could he die just like that? Just as Zhou Lin was feeling extremely sorrowful, Shangguan Yuanhao's laughter suddenly rang out from behind her. That laughter was filled with pride and arrogance. It was completely different from his usual sanctimonious self. Hearing Zhou Meng's words, Zhou Lin really wanted to turn around and kill Shangguan Yuanhao. However, she knew very well that she couldn't do that now. If she turned around now, then all of Zhou Meng's sacrifices for her would be in vain. TSK. What a hard heart. The enemy who killed your father is right behind you. You don't even have the courage to turn around? Shangguan Yuanhao continued to provoke Zhou Lin with his words. You probably don't know how I tortured your father back then, right? I personally shattered his dantian, crushed all of his meridians, and broke the tendons in his arms and legs. I tortured him until he was a cripple. Back then, his screams could be heard throughout Sky City. Didn't you hear it? It sounded like a ghost crying and a wolf howling. Bastard! You're a bastard! You're an unforgivable devil! Zhou Lin really couldn't hold on any longer. Every word that Shangguan Yuanhao said was like a sharp knife stabbing into her heart. Even breathing became painful for her. At this moment, perhaps death was the best choice for her. Seeing that Zhou Lin was on the verge of breaking down, Shangguan Yuanhao chuckled and said to Zhou Lin, "Come back with me." I promise that I won't kill you. You'll only have a chance at revenge if you stay by my side, right? Zhou Lin didn't listen to Shangguan Yuanhao's words at all. No matter what, she couldn't go back to Sky City, even if it meant death. Seeing that Zhou Lin didn't listen to his words at all, Shangguan Yuanhao finally lost his last bit of patience. His face gradually became gloomy, and he said angrily, "Since you're so stubborn, then don't blame me for being ruthless as your teacher." Before he even finished his words, Shangguan Yuanhao waved his palm at Zhou Lin. A powerful wave of spirit energy instantly broke through the ninth Skywalker's energy shield, pierced through Zhou Meng's corpse, and hit Zhou Lin. Chapter 808. On the way to Sky City, Qin Chuan suddenly frowned and said to Lu Zi, "There's a very powerful aura over there. It seems to be Shangguan Yuanhao?" Qin Chuan sensed a powerful aura moving at high speed about 1,000 miles away from them. It seemed to be chasing after something. He felt that this aura was similar to Shangguan Yuanhao's, but it also felt a little different. After hearing Qin Chuan's words, Lu Zi said to Qin Chuan, "Why don't we go over and take a look? If it really is Shangguan Yuanhao, it will save us a lot of effort." They were going to Sky City this time to find Shangguan Yuanhao for revenge. If they could meet Shangguan Yuanhao outside Sky City, it would naturally be an excellent thing. It would save them a lot of time and effort. Wait a minute. There's another aura that's senior sister? Qin Chuan's eyes suddenly widened. He sensed Zhou Lin's aura suddenly appear and then disappear again. Just as Qin Chuan exclaimed, Lu Zi also sensed the aura that disappeared in a flash. She seemed to have thought of something, and her expression changed slightly. Could it be that Shangguan Yuanhao is chasing after Zhou Lin's shuttle? He destroyed it just now, so, before Lu Zi could finish her sentence, Qin Chuan was already flying towards the place where Zhou Lin's aura appeared. Lu Zi could only swallow her unfinished words and follow Qin Chuan. 1,000 miles was just a blink of an eye for Qin Chuan, but for the current Qin Chuan, both the distance and time seemed to be extremely long. When he arrived at the scene with his fastest speed, all he saw was a flying shuttle that was billowing smoke and falling to the ground. He recognized that broken purple flying shuttle. It was Zhou Lin's Skywalker 9. At the same time, Shangguan Yuanhao's figure also appeared at the place where the flying shuttle fell. At the same time, he also noticed Qin Chuan's sudden appearance. When he saw Qin Chuan's figure, Shangguan Yuanhao's face was filled with shock. He didn't expect Qin Chuan to suddenly appear at this place. If he had known that Qin Chuan would be here, he definitely wouldn't have shown himself. Shangguan Yuanhao. Qin Chuan's angry roar resounded through the sky. A sharp sword aura shot out from his body and shot towards Shangguan Yuanhao. The terrifying energy fluctuations made Shangguan Yuanhao unable to resist, and he turned around and ran. In order to prevent Qin Chuan from chasing him, he didn't forget to send a palm strike towards the flying shuttle that had fallen to the ground. When Qin Chuan saw this, he immediately rushed towards the flying shuttle and blocked the palm strike. At the same time, Lu Zi also arrived. She said to Qin Chuan, "Go after Shangguan Yuanhao. I'll save Zhou Lin." When Qin Chuan heard this, he looked at the broken flying shuttle and gritted his teeth. He turned around and chased after Shangguan Yuanhao. If Shangguan Yuanhao had been toying with Zhou Lin like a cat playing with a mouse when he was chasing after her, he was now as pathetic as a stray dog. His only thought was to return to Sky City as soon as possible and hide behind his master. Shangguan Yuanhao, die! At this moment, Qin Chuan's angry roar came from behind Shangguan Yuanhao. At the same time, countless sword auras shot towards him from behind, filled with killing intent. In the face of Qin Chuan's attack, Shangguan Yuanhao had no intention of stopping. He raised his hand and threw out several defensive treasures behind him. After using the treasures to block the incoming sword auras, he didn't even have the intention of retrieving the treasures. He directly threw them away. Even so, Shangguan Yuanhao still couldn't do anything to stop Qin Chuan from chasing after him. The distance between the two of them was getting closer and closer. When he saw that Qin Chuan would catch up to him in less than 5 minutes, Shangguan Yuanhao's expression darkened. He roared at Qin Chuan, "Qin Chuan, if you dare to kill me, my master won't let you go. Then I'll kill your master as well." Qin Chuan roared. Today, even if the Heavenly King came, he wouldn't be able to stop him. When Shangguan Yuanhao saw that Qin Chuan was ignoring his threat, he finally stopped running and turned around to charge at Qin Chuan. "I killed your parents back then, and I can kill you today." Boom! As Shangguan Yuanhao rushed towards Qin Chuan, he launched a series of attacks at Qin Chuan. However, his seemingly powerful attacks were like popped balloons in front of Qin Chuan. They couldn't do anything to stop Qin Chuan at all. Seeing that Shangguan Yuanhao was rushing towards him, Qin Chuan gave up on long-range attacks and closed in on Shangguan Yuanhao. He wanted to use his fists to beat Shangguan Yuanhao up. Bang! Qin Chuan threw a punch and accurately hit Shangguan Yuanhao's abdomen. Then, he threw another punch at Shangguan Yuanhao's head. However, Shangguan Yuanhao raised his hand and blocked it. The intense pain in his abdomen made Shangguan Yuanhao feel unbearable pain. The raging spiritual energy and lightning energy had almost paralyzed half of his body. At this moment, he finally realized that the gap between him and Qin Chuan was like a chasm. Such a huge gap wasn't something he could cross just by gathering his courage. However, it was too late for him to realize this. Qin Chuan's attack had arrived, and it almost destroyed his consciousness. Bang! 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 At this moment, Qin Chuan was like a gangster on the street. He didn't use any spiritual energy and only used his physical strength to attack Shangguan Yuanhao. Every punch landed on Shangguan Yuanhao's body. In just a few punches, Shangguan Yuanhao had already lost his human form. "This punch is for my father. This punch is for my mother. This punch is for my senior sister. This punch is for myself." Bang! Qin Chuan's fist fiercely hit Shangguan Yuanhao's head. Shangguan Yuanhao's head was easily shattered by Qin Chuan like a watermelon. Whoosh! The moment Shangguan Yuanhao's head was shattered, a fist-sized shadow suddenly rushed out from Shangguan Yuanhao's head and flew towards Sky City. Qin Chuan took a closer look and saw that Shangguan Yuanhao's nascent soul had escaped. Although nascent soul cultivators had the ability to cast their nascent souls out of their bodies, very few of them would use it. This was because nascent souls were too weak. Once they left their bodies for too long, there was a possibility that they would collapse. Therefore, very few nascent soul cultivators would use this ability unless they had no other choice. Obviously, Shangguan Yuanhao had been forced into a corner by Qin Chuan and had no choice but to abandon his physical body. Fortunately, Qin Chuan was a late nascent soul cultivator. His nascent soul was strong enough and faster than his physical body, so Qin Chuan wasn't able to catch up to him in a short period of time. This gave him a chance to escape back to Sky City. Chapter 809. Master, save me! When he was about 100 miles away from the castle in the sky, Shangguan Yuanhao let out an extremely shrill cry toward the castle in the sky. It startled the entire castle in the sky, causing everyone to look in the direction of the sound. As Shangguan Yuanhao's cry for help fell, an extremely astonishing aura suddenly rose from the castle in the sky and went straight into the clouds. Jingyu, who was dressed in white, stood in the air, allowing the wind to sweep his sleeves. He looked like an unworldly expert. Looking at the nascent soul flying toward him, a subtle look flashed across his eyes. When Shangguan Yuanhao saw Jingyu, his young face couldn't help but reveal a look of ecstasy. He rushed toward Jingyu with all his might and hid behind Jingyu with a swoosh. He shouted, "Master, kill that guy!" Boom! Qin Chuan's figure landed in front of Jingyu like a cannonball. His entire body revealed an astonishing killing intent and was extremely powerful. Jingyu looked at Qinchuan calmly and asked, "Are you Qinchuan?" Qinchuan looked at Jingyu with a sharp gaze and asked, "Are you the master of that old dog Shangguan? Are you going to become my enemy for him?" Hearing Qinchuan's words, Jingyu raised his hand and gently waved it. Shangguan Yuanhao's nascent soul flew into his hand. He looked at it and said to Qinchuan, "You saw it. He no longer has a physical body. He was chased by you and consumed a lot of his nascent soul power. He has received enough punishment. Has the hatred in your heart lessened at all?" Qinchuan sneered and said, "As long as that old dog Shangguan is alive, the hatred in my heart will not lessen at all." Facing Qinchuan's strength, a strange look flashed across Jingyu's eyes. He said indifferently, "If that's the case, then I'll clean up the sect today and help you lessen the hatred in your heart." Shangguan Yuanhao, who was originally fearless and thought that he had escaped a disaster, suddenly changed his expression. Just as he was about to say something, he felt an extremely powerful force wrap around his body. The next moment, the terrifying force directly crushed his nascent soul. When he saw Jingyu crush Shangguan Yuanhao's nascent soul, Qinchuan couldn't help but be stunned. He really didn't expect Jingyu to do such a shocking thing. You should have sensed that Shangguan Yuanhao's aura has completely disappeared from this world. Your enemy is already dead, so it's time you should leave. Jingyu faintly smiled and said to Qinchuan, "It was Shangguan Yuanhao's idea that Sky City betrayed the Star Dragon Federation. Many people on the ground saw you chasing after Shangguan Yuanhao. Now that Shangguan Yuanhao has been executed, your prestige in the Star Dragon Federation will probably rise to another level." Hearing Jingyu's words, Qinchuan deeply looked at Jingyu and said, "Shangguan Yuanhao is your disciple." "Shangguan Yuanhao is indeed my disciple, but he has also done wrong. As his master, I should clean up the sect and return justice to this world." Jingyu sighed and said, "These days I've been waiting for him to realize his mistake and mend his ways. However, he really disappointed me. Not only did he not show any signs of repentance, he even used my power to commit crimes. I had no choice but to reluctantly clean up the sect." Looking at the regretful and helpless expression on Jingyu's face, Qinchuan's expression didn't change, but he was actually sneering in his heart. He definitely wouldn't believe Jingyu's one-sided story. If I hadn't heard Senior's explanation, I would have thought that Senior had heard of my previous achievements and was afraid, so. Qinchuan didn't finish his words, because he realized that Jingyu didn't disperse Shangguan Yuanhao's shattered nascent soul. Instead, he was slowly absorbing the power of Shangguan Yuanhao's nascent soul. Jingyu slightly pursed his lips and said to Qinchuan, "I'm taking back the power that I've imparted to Shangguan Yuanhao." Qinchuan looked at Jingyu with a subtle gaze and asked, "If you don't have a guilty conscience, why are you explaining all this to me? Qinchuan, if you can pretend that you didn't see what happened just now, I can give you a great opportunity." Jingyu looked deeply at Qinchuan. "Now that your enemy is dead, you don't want to complicate things, right?" Hearing Jingyu's words, Qinchuan pondered in his heart for a moment. Just as he was about to speak, Jingyu suddenly attacked him, raising his hand and slamming it towards his head. Sizzle! In the nick of time, Qinchuan used lightning escape to dodge Jingyu's attack. He stood 1,000 meters away and looked at Jingyu with a gloomy gaze. "You were absorbing Shangguan Yuanhao's nascent soul power for your own use, right? You're cultivating an evil technique." At this moment, Qinchuan understood that Jingyu was cultivating an evil technique. Once it was spread out, he would definitely be despised by the world. Even Qin Fenghua and the others would stay away from him. That was why Jingyu wanted to kill him to shut his mouth. When Jingyu saw that Qinchuan had dodged his attack, his expression suddenly became gloomy. He said coldly, "Shangguan Yuanhao is really a piece of trash. I created such a good condition for him to absorb other people's cultivation to strengthen himself. Who would have thought that the cultivation he painstakingly absorbed for so many years couldn't even compare to what you, a little guy, obtained in just a few years of cultivation? Hearing Jing Yu's words, Qin Chuan couldn't help but reveal a look of realization. He said to Jing Yu, "So you took that old dog Shangguan as your disciple with the intention of absorbing his cultivation. You're raising him like a venomous insect." "You're right." Shangguan Yuanhao was indeed raised by me to strengthen my own venomous insect. Your senior sister must have fallen into Shangguan Yuanhao's evil hands, right? You probably don't know, but every disciple that Shangguan Yuanhao took in was killed and absorbed as a venomous insect. Your senior sister was even forced to marry someone she didn't like. In order to protect her father's life, she had no choice but to use herself as a cauldron for others to cultivate. Now that she's dead, it's actually a form of relief for her. When Qin Chuan heard Jing Yu's words, his expression suddenly became extremely ugly. He said angrily, "You're saying that my senior sister was forced to marry Si Tang by that old dog Shangguan? In order to protect her father's life?" "That's right. This was all done by that good disciple of mine." Jing Yu sneered. "Back then, Shangguan Yuanhao probably killed your parents because they found out that Shangguan Yuanhao was cultivating evil technique. They had no choice but to silence him. Bastard!" Qin Chuan's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. He could never have imagined that the truth behind his parents' deaths would be like this. If he had known about this earlier, he definitely wouldn't have waited until now to come to Sky City. However, it was too late to find out about this now. Zhou Lin's life was unknown, and Shangguan Yuanhao was already dead. Now, he could only vent his anger on Jing Yu. "Old dog, if you hadn't taught Shangguan Yuanhao such evil techniques, none of this would have happened. You're the real culprit. Today I'll kill you." Chapter 8:10. Seeing Qin Chuan's face become ferocious due to anger, Jing Yu laughed wildly and said to Qin Chuan, "Ha ha ha, why do you think I'm telling you these secrets here? If you had attacked me just now, I might have been in some danger, but now, what do you have to fight me?" As Jing Yu's voice fell, the Sky City under their feet suddenly shook violently. The ground shattered, the buildings collapsed, and people were running away and screaming everywhere, as if the end of the world had arrived. Looking at the shocking changes in the Sky City under his feet, Qin Chuan's face couldn't help but show a touch of shock, and he cried out involuntarily, "You destroyed the entire Sky City? There are so many people in this city. You?" Seeing Qin Chuan's shocked look, Jing Yu laughed and said to Qin Chuan, "You're too naive. In the eyes of people like me, what's the difference between those ordinary people and ants? Even if 1,000,000 people die, I will never frown. But don't you find that thing that is breaking out of the ground a little familiar?" Even without Jing Yu's reminder, Qin Chuan had already discovered the cause of the Sky City's disintegration. It was a huge metal object. However, Qin Chuan wasn't in the mood to care about this now. He just wanted to save as many people as possible. Jing Yu looked at Qin Chuan's figure rushing down, and a touch of ridicule flashed in his eyes. He said coldly, "What a stupid decision." Whoosh! Qin Chuan's figure flashed, and he arrived at a broken street. He conveniently picked up the 2 children who were curled up in the corner. Then, he used his spiritual energy to grab a few adults nearby and quickly flew to other places. As Qin Chuan split more and more spiritual power, more and more people were saved by him. When the number of people exceeded 1,000, Qin Chuan felt a little strenuous and had to land inside. He planned to put down these people and then go back to save the others. The moment he landed with everyone, an earth-shattering explosion suddenly sounded behind him. The shattered Sky City had completely exploded. Qin Chuan turned his head to look at the resplendent flames in the sky. When he saw the gigantic creature rushing out of the flames, He was completely stunned. Looking at the huge silver-white battleship, Qin Chuan couldn't help but widen his eyes and say subconsciously, "This is Star Dragon?" Qin Chuan never thought that the Star Dragon, which he had only seen in books, would actually appear in front of his eyes one day. The core that supported the Sky City in the air for countless years turned out to be the Hope, which was built by the elves, and later became the Star Dragon of the Star Federation, universal-level battleship. Rumor has it that the Star Dragon has gone missing during an exploration of the universe. How did it become the Sky City? Qin Chuan couldn't believe it and couldn't understand it. At this time, Jing Yu was standing on the deck of the Star Dragon. Looking at the shock on Qin Chuan's face, he couldn't help but smile smugly. He said to Qin Chuan, "You're right, this is the Star Dragon. Are you shocked and in disbelief?" Actually, the Star Dragon didn't go missing back then. As the captain, I secretly brought it back to the Star Dragon Federation. I built the Sky City in the No Man's Land and hid it. No one has been able to discover this secret for so many years. Now, I finally don't have to keep it a secret anymore. Hearing Jing Yu's words, Qin Chuan said in disbelief, "How did you manage to bring the Star Dragon back without anyone noticing?" "I still have to thank my friends for their help. With their help, do you think this will be a difficult task?" Jing Yu sneered. "But even they don't know that the thing that I secretly transported back was the Star Dragon." Qin Chuan was so shocked by this news that he couldn't say a word. Everything in front of him had a huge impact on him. "Okay, that's the end of the chit-chat. Qin Chuan, are you ready for the bombardment of the Star Dragon?" Jing Yu grinned sinisterly at Qin Chuan. Then, he raised his arm high and shouted, "Lock onto the target and fire." Hearing Jing Yu's roar, Qin Chuan's face suddenly changed, and he flew away in a flash. However, the Star Dragon had completely locked onto him at this time. Countless meteorite star cannons fired at the same time, and the roar of the cannons was earth-shattering. Rumble! Qin Chuan narrowly avoided this round of bombardment, but the shock wave caused by the explosion of the cannons at close range still affected him greatly. The strong airflow almost tore him apart. Before Qin Chuan could adjust his state, a new round of bombardment began. "What did you say?" Qian Wujin grabbed the collar of the intelligence officer with a look of shock on his face. The intelligence officer quickly said to Qian Wujin, "Qin Chuan and Jing Yu were confronting each other in the Sky Castle, and the Sky Castle suddenly exploded. Rumor has it that the missing Star Dragon has reappeared and is bombarding Qin Chuan under Jing Yu's control." Hearing the intelligence officer's report again, Qian Wujin's face couldn't help but become extremely gloomy. He said angrily, "How did the Star Dragon end up in Jing Yu's hands?" Shimin Weiyang, who was standing at the side, narrowed his eyes slightly and said in a deep voice, "Have you forgotten when the Sky Castle was built? It was after we helped Jing Yu bring back a mysterious thing from outer space. I think that mysterious thing should be the Star Dragon." Damn it! This guy actually hid the Star Dragon in the Sky Castle all this time. If we had known about the existence of the Star Dragon, why would we have been in seclusion for so many years? Qian Wujin said angrily. He wants to keep it to himself. Let's think about what we should do now. Shimin Weiyang looked at Yi Ting and Qin Fenghua. Who should we help? Hearing this, Yi Ting looked at Qin Fenghua and asked, "What do you think?" Qin Fenghua glanced at Yi Ting indifferently and said, "Jing Yu should give us an explanation." "What the hell is that?" Lu Zi stared at the Star Dragon that was moving slowly in the sky, dumbfounded. It was the first time she had seen such a huge battleship that was comparable to a fleet of an army. "Star Dragon." An extremely weak voice rang out in LVZ's arms. LVZ could not help but reveal a look of astonishment when she heard that. "Star Dragon? This is actually the Star Dragon?" Just as Lu Zi was thinking about this, she also sensed Qin Chuan's aura appearing thousands of kilometers away. At the same time, the cannons of the Star Dragon also exploded. The Star Dragon is attacking Qinchuan. After realizing this, Lu Zi immediately wanted to rescue Qinchuan, but before that, she had to ask for help from the Elf City. Chapter 8:11. The news of the Star Dragon's reappearance spread throughout the Star Dragon Federation in less than 2 hours. All the forces were greatly shocked when they heard the news. Who would have thought that the Star Dragon, which had disappeared for thousands of years, was hidden in the Sky City? What was even more concerning was that Qinchuan was currently under the bombardment of the Star Dragon. He was in an extremely bad situation. The Star Dragon is actually the Sky City. Gawain was also stunned when he heard the news. He had never thought that the Star Dragon, which was supposed to be wandering in the universe, would suddenly appear in such a way. If we had the Star Dragon back then, how could Zerg be so arrogant? Qin Ju was extremely angry. Damn Jingyu! What should we do now? Lu Sun frowned and said, with the firepower of the Star Dragon, I'm afraid we won't be a match for it even if we use all of our fleets. The warships they had were on a completely different level compared to the Star Dragon. If they were to collide with the Star Dragon, it would be like hitting a rock with an egg. We can't just do nothing, Song Ji said coldly. None of the ancients who are still alive are good people. They're not even 1 in 10,000 compared to old Dean Ning. While everyone was anxiously thinking about how to deal with the Star Dragon, Gawain's secretary walked in and reported to Gawain, Chairman, someone from the Black Moon Combat Academy wants to see you. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Qin Fenghua and the other 3 suddenly appeared only a few dozen kilometers away from the Star Dragon. They looked at the huge, silver-white warship in front of them with a blazing look in their eyes. As long as they had the Star Dragon, they could use it to leave the land of exile and go to a wider universe to find new breakthroughs. Qian Wujin looked at the Star Dragon and said excitedly, as long as we can take the Star Dragon to the outside world, we can break through to the divine transformation realm. We won't have to go into seclusion to reduce the consumption of our lifespan. We can walk around the world without any worries. Let's go find Jingyu. Before Qian Wujin could finish speaking, the Star Dragon suddenly fired a cannon at where they were and exploded only 100 meters away from them. This sudden shot caused Qian Wujin to shut his mouth. It also caused everyone to calm down from their excitement. This was a warning from Jingyu. What does Jingyu want? Qian Wujin was infuriated. Did he forget that we played a part in bringing Star Dragon back? If he hadn't forgotten, he wouldn't have done this, Shiman Weiyang said with a gloomy face. He clearly doesn't want us to board Star Dragon. They could cover a distance of several dozen kilometers in the blink of an eye, but Star Dragon was not under their control. No one knew if there were any hidden dangers on Star Dragon. Once they boarded Star Dragon and Jingyu was hostile to them, it would be very difficult for them to escape unscathed. Just as everyone was thinking about this, Qinchuan's figure suddenly appeared only a few dozen miles away from them. He shouted at them, Jingyu cultivated an evil technique. After I found out, he wanted to kill me to silence me. If you don't help me, the next one to be killed will be you. He won't let anyone who poses a threat to him live in this world. Everyone's expression changed slightly when they heard Qinchuan's words. They did not expect that Qinchuan and Jingyu would fight because Qinchuan knew the secret of Jingyu's evil technique. Now that Qinchuan told them this news, wouldn't he be dragging them down with him? Qinchuan is despicable. He's deliberately pushing us against Jingyu. Qian Wujin was furious. He felt that Qinchuan was even more hateful than Jingyu. Yi Ting glanced at Qian Wujin subtly and asked, What? Do you still have the guts to be with Jingyu now? Hearing Yi Ting's words, Qian Wujin's face couldn't help but become extremely unsightly. Indeed, even if Jingyu were to stand before him and invite him to take Star Dragon to the outside world, he wouldn't dare to agree. Who would dare to walk together with someone who cultivated an evil technique? What should we do now? Shimin Weiyang glanced at Qinchuan and then looked at Star Dragon. If they helped Qinchuan together, it might make things easier for Qinchuan. We have no reason to help Qinchuan deal with Jingyu, right? Let them fight first. It's good to let Qinchuan exhaust Star Dragon's firepower, Yi Ting said faintly. Let's back off a little and wait for the changes. Before the situation was clear, Yi Ting did not want to make a move easily. In the distance, Qinchuan could not help but curse cowards when he saw Yi Ting and the others retreating. He really did not expect Yi Ting and the others to be so tolerant. They still chose to back off after knowing that Jingyu was an evil cultivator. However, in this way, he would have to face the bombardment of Star Dragon alone. It would be fine if the bombardment was short, but if it was too long, he was afraid that he would not be able to hold on. Moreover, Star Dragon had not fired at full power yet, and Jingyu was also conserving ammunition. Once Star Dragon fired at full power, he would be in a very bad situation. He might not be able to hold on for long before he was hit. By then, no matter how strong he would die under Star Dragon's bombardment. The cannon fodder of a universe-level battleship was no joke. Qinchuan. At this moment, Lu Zi's shout came from not far away. Hang in there, Brother Gao has a way to deal with Star Dragon. He's on his way. Hearing Lu Zi's shout, Qinchuan could not help but feel refreshed, and a look of joy appeared on his face. This news was too timely for him. Lu Zi's shout was also heard by Yi Ting and the others not far away. They all had subtle expressions on their faces. Gaoan actually has a way to deal with Star Dragon? Could it be that there's some special control method left behind on Star Dragon? Shimin Weiyang was a little puzzled. If there's really such a control method, won't Star Dragon fall into Gaoan's hands? If we stand by and do nothing, won't they target us when the time comes? We're just standing by and not hitting Qinchuan when he's down. What reason do they have to target us? Qian Wujin snorted coldly. I think we should wait and see. If Gaoan really has a way to seize control of Star Dragon, then we'll kill Jingyu and do our part. It's everyone's responsibility to kill evil cultivators. Qin Fenghua looked indifferently at Qinchuan, who was trying his best to dodge the bombardment. There was no warmth in his eyes at all, only the gains and losses of benefits and calculations. These people who had lived for thousands of years could only see benefits in their eyes. Chapter 8:12. It had been 2 hours since Star Dragon appeared, and Qinchuan had been bombarded for 2 hours. Although Qinchuan had not been hit by Star Dragon's cannons yet, as time passed, Qinchuan's movements began to show some flaws. Star Dragon, on the other hand, was still as accurate as ever. The gap between a human body and a machine began to show. If this stalemate continued, Qinchuan would definitely be the first to give up. During this process, Qinchuan had thought of charging into Star Dragon and engaging in a head-on battle with Jingyu. However, the closer he got to Star Dragon, the more intense and faster the cannons fired. As a result, Qinchuan had no chance to get close to Star Dragon at all and could only passively take the hits from a distance. If Lu Zi had not told Qinchuan in time that Gaoan had a way to deal with Star Dragon, he would have wanted to temporarily retreat from Star Dragon's attack and fight another day. However, it would take at least half a day for Qinchuan to get here from Star Dragon City. It was really unknown whether Qinchuan could hold on until then. No, I can't go on like this. I have to find a way to break this stalemate. Qinchuan gritted his teeth and shouted in the direction of Star Dragon, Jingyu, killing me won't do you any good. The fact that you're an evil cultivator is no longer a secret. It will definitely spread throughout the world in the future. Why don't we stop and make peace? As soon as Qinchuan's voice fell, Star Dragon answered him with an even fiercer bombardment. Qinchuan was exhausted from dodging and had a headache. Boom! Qinchuan's figure flashed, and he narrowly dodged the bombardment of the Star Destroyer cannons. Qian Wujin's laughter suddenly came from not far away. I suddenly thought of an old saying, using an anti-aircraft cannon to kill a fly is a waste of talent. I think using Star Dragon to deal with Qinchuan is really a waste. In my opinion, Star Dragon's journey should be the Sea of Stars. The people standing beside Qian Wujin nodded in agreement when they heard what Qian Wujin said. In their opinion, the greatest use of the Star Dragon should be to help ambitious cultivators like them cross the universe in pursuit of a higher realm, not to fight. When Qinchuan heard Qian Wujin's words, he couldn't help but feel annoyed. He was being bombarded by Star Dragon, and not only did these people not help him, they even mocked him. This was too much. Thinking of this, Qinchuan's figure flashed and dashed towards Qian Wujin. At this time, Qian Wujin was laughing happily. When he saw Qinchuan approaching them, he didn't care. But when Qinchuan got closer and closer to them, and saw a series of flames exploding behind Qinchuan, Qian Wujin's face finally changed. He shouted at Qinchuan, "Qinchuan, what are you trying to do?" Qinchuan sneered and replied, "I'm not trying to do anything. I just want you to have a taste of being hit like a mosquito by an anti-aircraft cannon." As he spoke, Qinchuan's figure had already arrived in front of Qian Wujin and the other three, and what followed was the Star Dragon's bombardment. Boom! The cannon fire exploded in the middle of the crowd, and the people who were caught in the crossfire scattered in all directions. Although they were not hit, their appearance became somewhat miserable, and the expressions on their faces could be said to be extremely ugly. Qian Wujin dodged the bombardment while looking back at Qinchuan, who was following closely behind him. He said angrily, "What are you trying to do, you lunatic?" Qinchuan grinned. "To hit a mosquito." Qinchuan sneered. "I'm a fly, you're a mosquito. Let's see who gets killed by the anti-aircraft cannon first." Hearing Qinchuan's words, how could Qian Wujin not understand that his previous words had provoked Qinchuan's revenge? For a moment, he was filled with regret. It would have been great if he could have just stood at the side and watched the show. Why did he have to speak so much? Now, he had become a part of the show. "Qinchuan, this is a misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding." Qian Wujin felt very aggrieved. If it were any other time, he would have turned back and fought with Qinchuan. Even if he lost, it would be better than being forced like this. However, it was different now. Star Dragon was watching from the side. If he turned back and fought with Qinchuan at this time, the two of them might really become flies and mosquitoes that died under the anti-aircraft cannon. Misunderstanding? I don't think it's a misunderstanding. Qinchuan continued to sneer. Today, he had made up his mind to pester Qian Wujin bit by bit. He would go wherever Qian Wujin went. Seeing that Qinchuan was unwilling to give up, Qian Wujin could only helplessly ask the others for help. However, the others turned a blind eye to Qian Wujin's request for help. They had no intention of helping Qian Wujin share the pressure. Seeing this, Qian Wujin was a little annoyed. When he said those words just now, the others were echoing him. Now that he was unlucky, the others were just watching the show. How could there be such a good thing in the world? Thinking of this, Qian Wujin gritted his teeth and turned to fly toward Shimen Weiyang. When Shimen Weiyang saw Qian Wujin flying toward her, she immediately saw through Qian Wujin's intentions. She immediately said angrily, "Qian Wujin, what are you doing?" When she saw Qian Wujin approaching her, Shimen Weiyang had no choice but to turn around and run. The direction he was heading towards just happened to be where Yi Ting was. This caused Yi Ting's expression to instantly become extremely brilliant, and then he turned around and charged towards Qin Fenghua. For a moment, everyone was chasing each other, running circles around Star Dragon like a marathon. It was really lively. Buzz. When the light of the teleportation array faded, everyone led by Gao and appeared on the teleportation array. He glanced at the coordinates and said to everyone, we will have to walk the rest of the way by ourselves. It is estimated that we will arrive at Stardragon's location in another 2 hours. While speaking, Gowan looked at the silver-haired girl standing beside him and asked, "Are you sure you have a way to deal with Stardragon?" Even though she had repeatedly made it clear that she had a way to deal with Stardragon, Gowan still found it hard to believe. "I'm a blood elf," the girl answered Gowan calmly. She was a blood elf, and Stardragon's predecessor, the Hope, was built by blood elves. Hearing the girl's words, Gowan's expression changed slightly. He said to the girl, "A few years ago, during the ranking competition of the 6 great academies, I heard about the reappearance of blood elves in the Black Moon Combat Academy. However, I didn't pay much attention to it at the time. The blood elf who appeared at that time was you, right?" The girl nodded. The blood elf who appeared during the ranking competition of the 6 great academies was indeed her, by you. "Then let's not waste any more time. Let's set off immediately." Gowan did not say anything else. Every minute they wasted now would put Qin Chuan in more danger. It was better to rush over and rescue Qin Chuan as soon as possible. Chapter 8:13. On Stardragon, Jingyu could not help but reveal a playful smile as he looked at the 5 people who were fleeing frantically in the air. He originally planned to deal with Qin Chuan first before dealing with the other 4, but he did not expect them to be dragged down by Qin Chuan in advance. Based on his understanding of these 4 people, they should soon join forces to pressure him and force him to stop the bombardment. Just as Jingyu had this thought, Qian Wujin roared in the direction of Stardragon, "Jingyu, stop right now, or I won't be polite to you." Shimen Weiyang also shouted at Jingyu, "Jingyu, don't go too far. If the 5 of us join forces to attack you, you won't be able to stop us even if you have Stardragon." Although Yi Ting and Qin Fenghua didn't say anything due to their status, their gazes towards Stardragon already showed their attitude. They definitely wouldn't allow Jingyu to continue toying with them like this. Jingyu chuckled and said to the 4 of them, "As long as you turn back and help me kill Qin Chuan, I will naturally stop the bombardment." Hearing Jingyu's words, the expressions of Yi Ting and the other 3 changed slightly. They were not fools. After Qin Chuan died, Jingyu would definitely target them. At that time, would they have to kill the others for temporary safety? Once they attacked Qin Chuan, they would definitely fall into Jingyu's trap. "Jingyu, do you really want to force us to attack you?" Yi Ting's face had completely turned cold at this time. Before he came into being, he thought that their operation would be smooth sailing, but he did not expect that it would not go smoothly from the beginning until now. If this continued, he would not be able to resist the urge to go back to sleep. Seeing that Yi Ting was really angry, Jingyu smiled and said to Yi Ting, "Since you don't want to attack Qin Chuan, don't blame me for being rude to you." As Jingyu's voice fell, nearly 100 Star Destroyer cannons appeared on the deck of Stardragon one after another. Seeing this scene, everyone's face instantly turned ugly. "All these years, I have never stopped upgrading Stardragon. The bombardment you faced earlier was just a drop in the ocean. Now, I'll let you have a taste of how terrifying Stardragon's firepower is when it gets serious." Hearing Jingyu's words, Qian Wujin could not help but curse. "Damn it, don't tell me he transformed Stardragon into a war machine. Isn't it because you provoked Qin Chuan?" Shimen Weiyang was a little embarrassed. "It's bad luck yourself, but you dragged us down too." "Shut up, all of you. Don't tell me you really want to be blasted to death like mosquitoes." Yi Ting said to everyone indifferently, "Let's think of a way to get out of this situation." While speaking, Yi Ting looked at Qin Chuan at the back and said to Qin Chuan, "Qin Chuan, we are now grasshoppers on the same rope. There's no need to be impulsive. If you have any way to deal with Jingyu, tell us. We will definitely do our best to cooperate with you." Although everyone did not have a good impression of Qin Chuan, they could only cooperate with Qin Chuan in order to protect themselves at this time. Qin Chuan grinned and said to Yi Ting, I really do have a way, but I'm afraid you won't cooperate with me. Yi Ting's eyes narrowed slightly as he said to Qin Chuan, Why don't you tell me what method you have? But if you want the four of us to charge to our deaths, then forget it. Qin Chuan said seriously, You are all cultivators in the peak nascent soul stage. How can you charge to your deaths? I just need a little time. As long as you can prevent me from being disturbed by the gunfire for 10 seconds, I will definitely make Jing Yu suffer a big loss. Yi Ting frowned and said, Are you sure? Qin Chuan nodded. As long as you believe in me, I will not let you down. Then come on. Yi Ting was not a long-winded person. He raised his hand and gathered the surrounding spiritual power, turning it into a huge leaf in his hand and falling in front of Qin Chuan, blocking the gunfire from Star Dragon for him. At the same time, Qian Wujin took out a huge copper coin and placed it behind the leaf, while Shimen Weiyang took out a piece of sky-blue satin cloth and placed it behind the copper coin. Qin Fenghua, on the other hand, simply took action against the incoming cannonballs and detonated dozens of them in the distance. Let's begin. Yi Ting looked at Qin Chuan. He wanted to see what method Qin Chuan had to make Jing Yu suffer a big loss. Qin Chuan did not waste any time and directly took out a talisman pen and began to inscribe a talisman array. Seeing this scene, Yi Ting could not help but frown slightly. Just as he was about to say something, his face changed slightly when he felt the powerful spiritual power fluctuations emitted from the talisman array. He cried out involuntarily, This is a 4th-level talisman array? 4th-level talisman arrays were the top talisman arrays that very few people could master, and each of them was extremely powerful. If Qin Chuan was really inscribing a 4-season talisman array, then it might really make Jing Yu suffer a big loss. Qian Wujin glanced at Qin Chuan's actions and couldn't help but whisper, Don't hurt Star Dragon. Qin Chuan had no intention of responding to Yi Ting and Qian Wujin at all. He was fully focused on inscribing the talisman array, and the time he needed was far more than 10 seconds. Just as Shimen Weiyang wanted to urge Qin Chuan, Star Dragon finally went all out. Countless cannonballs shot out from the deck of Star Dragon and fiercely bombarded the outermost leaf. The powerful impact almost instantly tore the leaves apart and then poured down on the copper coin. The originally golden copper coin was smashed into scrap metal by this attack, and it was covered in cracks. Oh no, my copper coin can't block the next attack. Qian Wujin looked at the ruined coin with some heartache. After so many years, he had only saved up a few dozen of these copper coins. Now that one of them had been ruined so easily, he naturally felt extremely distressed. Whoosh! A golden shield suddenly appeared in front of everyone. It was Qin Fenghua's top magic treasure, and its defensive power was comparable to a half-step Taoist instrument. It should be able to easily block the next round of attacks from Star Dragon. Jing Yu's modification of Star Dragon should not only be in terms of attack, but also the coordination between the cannonballs. If it was just a simple volley, it would definitely not be as powerful as just now. Qin Fenghua glanced at the half-inscribed talisman array in Qin Chuan's hand and said with a frown, My floating light shield can block at most one attack. You have to hurry. Now, all their hopes were pinned on the talisman array written by Qin Chuan. Chapter 8:14. On Star Dragon, Jing Yu looked gloomily at the floating light shield in the sky, and a hint of coldness appeared on his face. Do these guys think they can sit back and relax just because they're hiding behind it? Ridiculous. Following Jing Yu's order, Star Dragon immediately changed the direction of the cannons and began to fire in a scattered manner. Although the cannons would lose the power of a volley, they could attack from all directions without any blind spots and easily break the defense of Qin Chuan and the others. When Jing Yu ordered Star Dragon to change its battle plan, the observant people also noticed the change in Star Dragon, and they all became vigilant. When they saw the cannons on Star Dragon shooting in all directions, their faces changed slightly, and they subconsciously set up defenses around them. Rumble! Like a heavenly maiden scattering flowers, the cannons exploded in the sky, and the blazing flames and flashing lasers completely enveloped Qin Chuan and the rest, turning them into a sea of fire. When Jingyu saw this, a sneer slowly appeared at the corner of his mouth. "I'd like to see what you're going to do this time." Before Jingyu could finish his sentence, he felt a great sense of danger shrouding him. An extremely thick and heavy black chain dropped down from the monstrous flames, heading straight for where he was standing on the deck of Star Dragon in astonishment. Looking at the strange chain that exuded a powerful sealing aura, Jing Yu's face suddenly changed, and he cried out, "This is immortal imprisoning lock?" When Jing Yu realized the origin of the black chain, he subconsciously wanted to escape, but the immortal imprisoning lock did not give him the chance at all. It wrapped around him in an instant and tied him up. Clatter! The black chain wrapped around Jing Yu like a black python, and almost instantly, Jing Yu lost his ability to move. His spiritual power was also sealed, and he became a cripple. When the flames in the sky dissipated, everyone subconsciously looked at Jing Yu, who was sitting on the deck of Star Dragon. Their eyes followed the black chain all the way up until they saw the array diagram in front of Qin Chuan. Immortal Imprisoning Talisman Array. The Level 4 Talisman Array that Qin Chuan inscribed was the long-lost Immortal Imprisoning Talisman Array. Yi Ting's eyes were full of shock, and there was even a faint sense of horror and fear. Qin Chuan knew the Immortal Imprisoning Talisman Array, which also meant that Qin Chuan had the ability to seal all of them. Subconsciously, everyone distanced themselves from Qin Chuan, as if they were afraid of being targeted by Qin Chuan and ending up like Jing Yu. As the crowd retreated, Qin Chuan could see the fear in their hearts towards him. However, he did not take it to heart. This was because he had already expected such an outcome when he inscribed the Talisman Array. This is not the Immortal Imprisoning Talisman Array. Qin Chuan explained to everyone, this talisman array was originally called Empathy. Later on, I modified it into the current Minor Immortal Prison Talisman Array. Everyone frowned slightly when they heard Qin Chuan's words. Immortal Imprisoning Talisman Array? Seeing that everyone was still confused, Qin Chuan continued to explain. The so-called Minor Immortal Imprisoning Talisman Array is a simplified version of the Immortal Imprisoning Talisman Array. Although it has the effect of sealing the enemy, it also has a side effect. That is, as the caster, I will also be sealed. You mean to say that you and Jing Yu are in the same state now? Qin Fenghua looked at Qin Chuan in surprise. How can there be such a strange talisman array diagram in this world? There are all kinds of strange things in this world. Qin Chuan smiled and said to everyone, the Immortal Imprisoning Talisman Array 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 Talisman Array. Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard Qin Chuan's words. Whoosh! Qian Wujin and Shimen Weiyang flew toward Star Dragon almost at the same time. Seeing this, Yi Ting hesitated for a moment before flying over as well. However, Qin Fenghua stayed where he was and didn't move. Qin Chuan was a little surprised by this and asked, "Don't you plan to follow them?" Qin Fenghua looked at Qin Chuan with a subtle gaze and asked, "You just explained the function of the Immortal Imprisoning Talisman Array so clearly. Aren't you afraid that we will suddenly kill you? In this way, Jing Yu will die, and it will be killing two birds with one stone for us." Hearing this, Qin Chuan chuckled and said to Qin Fenghua, "We are now grasshoppers on the same rope. I believe that you won't do something like burning the bridge after crossing the river. You'd better tell me the truth. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that I won't attack you." Qin Fenghua took a deep look at Qin Chuan and said, You have too many treasures. I'm very tempted. Facing Qin Fenghua's faint threat, Qin Chuan was silent for a moment before he grinned and said to Qin Fenghua, "You're really thinking too much. I'm telling the truth. If you don't believe me, then attack me." "I promise, Rumble." Before Qin Chuan could finish speaking, a violent roar suddenly sounded in the distance. Qian Wujin and Shimen Weiyang, who were diving towards Star Dragon, were suddenly bombarded by Star Dragon's cannons. They were caught off guard and suffered a great loss. Boom! Boom! Star Dragon opened fire once again. The crazy firepower pouring down instantly made Qian Wujin and Shimen Weiyang's situation turn bad. Yi Ting, who was following closely behind them, hurriedly stopped moving forward and retreated rapidly. Seeing this scene, Qin Fenghua's face changed slightly, and she said to Qin Chuan, "You joined forces with Jingyu? You want to trick us into going down and use Star Dragon's firepower to kill us?" Qin Chuan said innocently, "How can I join forces with Jingyu here?" "Because of this." Qin Fenghua pointed at the chain extending from the formation diagram in front of Qin Chuan. "You must have connected with Jingyu through this talisman formation." Hearing Qin Fenghua's words, Qin Chuan's face couldn't help but reveal a look of surprise. He didn't expect Qin Fenghua's mind to be so smart, to actually see through his methods in such a short period of time. When she saw the surprise on Qin Chuan's face, Qin Fenghua knew that she had guessed correctly. Her face instantly became gloomy, and she said to Qin Chuan, "How dare you do this?" Qin Chuan chuckled and said to Qin Fenghua, "In the end, Jingyu and you are no different in my eyes. You are both obstacles to the future development of the Star Dragon Federation. Although Jingyu has Star Dragon, he is only one person after all. However, there are 4 of you, which is a bigger threat to me. So, if there is a chance, of course I want to get rid of you first." "Then how are you going to deal with Jingyu?" Qin Fenghua's face turned pale. "He has Star Dragon. Have you forgotten? Brother Gao has a way to deal with Star Dragon." Qin Chuan grinned, "So, I don't panic at all." Chapter 8:15. Qin Chuan was able to discern from the actions of Yi Ting's group of 4 from the beginning that it was absolutely impossible for him to become friends with Yi Ting's group of 4. Moreover, based on the conflicts and differences in their ideals, it was probably extremely difficult for them to become strangers, and the greatest possibility was to become enemies. Since they were destined to become enemies, he naturally had to strike first to gain the upper hand. With the help of Jingyu, he would heavily injure Yi Ting's group of 4. Even if he couldn't kill all of them, he would at least kill 1 or 2 of them with all his strength, greatly weakening the strength of Yi Ting's group of 4. When Gaon arrived, he would deal with Jingyu, who had lost his Star Dragon ship, and then return to deal with the rest of Yi Ting's group of 4. This way, all the obstacles that obstructed the future development of the Star Dragon Federation would be swept away, and the future would be bright. This was Qin Chuan's plan. The reason why Jingyu cooperated with Qin Chuan was because of the minor immortal imprisoning charm array. Before knowing the specific abilities of the minor immortal imprisoning charm array, Jingyu naturally had to cooperate with Qin Chuan to protect himself. As for the life and death of Yi Ting's group of 4, how could Jingyu care about it? After understanding Qin Chuan's series of plans, Qin Fenghua couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. She then asked Qin Chuan, "Did you come up with this plan long ago, or did you come up with it on the spur of the moment?" "It should be considered a spur-of-the-moment plan." Qin Chuan smiled. "From the moment the 4 of you chose to stand by and ridicule me, I decided to make a move against you without leaving any leeway." It was truly an extremely difficult thing for Qin Chuan to be able to survive until now. He'd experienced too many plots and schemes, and he'd already grown from the ignorant youth from all those years ago to a cunning little fox. Scheming against Yi Ting's group of 4 didn't cause any psychological burden to Qin Chuan. "You're telling me this now?" Aren't you afraid that I'll tell them the truth and join hands with them to deal with you? Qin Fenghua looked deeply at Qin Chuan. What are you thinking? I'm betting that you won't tell them. Qin Chuan grinned. Actually, I can tell that you're not on the same side as them. Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Qin Fenghua couldn't help but reveal a subtle expression. She asked Qin Chuan, "How can you tell that I'm not on the same side as them?" Simple logic, actually. Before Qin Chuan could finish speaking, Yi Ting's figure appeared in front of him. His tone was somewhat embarrassed as he questioned, "Didn't you say that Jingyu didn't dare to open fire?" Hearing this, Qin Chuan said to Yi Ting with an innocent face, "Actually, he really didn't fire at me. You guys have left the area where I'm at, so of course he can attack you guys without restraint." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Yi Ting opened her mouth, but she couldn't even say a word to refute because what Qin Chuan said was really too reasonable. While Yi Ting was in a daze, Shimin Weiyang and Qian Wujin also escaped. The two of them were bombarded by Star Dragon's cannons at close range. Although they didn't die, they were in an extremely sorry state. They were both seriously injured, and their breaths were somewhat unstable. However, compared to their unstable breaths, their fiery tempers were even more unstable. If it weren't for Yi Ting stopping them, the two of them would have attacked Qin Chuan. Facing the aggressive Qian Wujin and Shimin Weiyang, Qin Chuan smiled slightly and said very calmly, "Look, Senior Qin Fenghua and I are fine. After you guys came back, Star Dragon's cannons also stopped firing. This proves that the problem doesn't lie with me, but with you guys. Bastard, you were the one who instigated us to go down and take control of Star Dragon." Qian Wujin was furious. "Are you still trying to deny it now? That's right, I think you colluded with Jingyu to deliberately kill us." Shimin Weiyang looked aggrieved. This was the first time in his life that he felt so aggrieved. Hearing Qian Wujin and Shimin Weiyang's words, Yi Ting took a deep look at Qin Chuan and said, "The two of them are right. You were indeed the one who instigated us to go down and take control of Star Dragon. You have to give us an explanation today." Facing the aggressive momentum of Yi Ting and the other two, Qin Chuan grinned and said, "Just now, I did say that now is the best time to take control of Star Dragon, but you guys ran down before I finished speaking. Can you blame me for that? Jingyu doesn't dare to attack me. If the three of you go down, how can he not attack? But if the three of you take me down with you, do you think Jingyu will still dare to attack?" Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Qian Wujin's and Shimin Weiyang's eyes lit up. Why didn't they think of this just now? Although Yi Ting felt that there was something wrong with Qin Chuan's words were reasonable and he couldn't detect what was wrong for a moment. Qin Fenghua, who was standing at the side, saw that Yi Ting and the other two were so easily fooled by Qin Chuan, and her expression couldn't help but become extremely ugly. At this moment, she really doubted whether it was a wrong choice to cooperate with these people for so many years. "Qin Fenghua, what do you think?" Yi Ting looked at Qin Fenghua, hoping to hear Qin Fenghua's opinion. "What do I think? I'll watch from afar." Qin Fenghua snorted coldly, turned around, and flew into the distance. In the blink of an eye, her figure disappeared into the horizon, as if she didn't intend to continue getting involved in this matter. Her abnormal behavior stunned Yi Ting and the other two. They didn't understand why Qin Fenghua suddenly left. For a moment, doubts arose in Yi Ting's heart. He actually had some thoughts of retreating and didn't want to continue wasting time here. "Hey, what do you want to do? If you don't plan to continue fighting with Jingyu, then leave. Anyway, I'll stay here and waste time with Jingyu. When Brother Gao and the others arrive, they can smoothly take control of the Star Dragon and then deal with Jingyu." Qin Chuan looked indifferent. In any case, he could advance or retreat now and wasn't afraid at all. Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Yi Ting, who had already thought of retreating, couldn't help but hesitate again. The Star Dragon was right in front of them. As long as they could obtain the Star Dragon, It would be equivalent to taking the first step to the soul formation stage. Such a huge temptation was right there. He was really unwilling to give up just like that. Just when Yi Ting was hesitating in his heart, Qian Wujin had already made up his mind. He gritted his teeth and said, "Let's take this kid down with us. He won't joke around with his life." "That's right, take him down with us. If the Star Dragon continues to bombard us, we'll blast this kid to death first." Shimin Weiyang was also unwilling. If they missed the Star Dragon today, it would be difficult for them to find another opportunity to seize the Star Dragon when Gaoan arrived and successfully took control of it. Seeing that Shimin Weiyang and Qian Wujin had already made up their minds, Yi Ting no longer hesitated. He hardened his heart and wanted to try again. If it didn't work, it wouldn't be too late to retreat then. Chapter 8:16. Qin Fenghua sat down on a mountain top after arriving 1,000 miles away and looked at the Star Dragon. When she realized that no one was following her, she couldn't help but show a look of disappointment on her face. Could it be that all of you have slept your brains out after all these years? People who have lived for thousands of years are being fooled by a brat who isn't even 30 years old. Qin Fenghua was utterly disappointed in Yi Ting and the other two. When the three of them saw the Star Dragon, they were like jackals who had been starving for 3 days. They couldn't take their eyes off it at all. They couldn't think of anything else other than eating meat. It was also because of today's incident that Qin Fenghua finally realized how terrifying Qin Chuan was. In her eyes, Qin Chuan was an out-and-out little fox who perfectly calculated the arrogance and greed of human nature. While Qin Fenghua was secretly scolding Yi Ting and the other two for being brainless, the three of them had already brought Qin Chuan back to the Star Dragon. This time, they were more cautious than before and were prepared to retreat at any time. However, there were no more artillery bombardments until they got close to the Star Dragon, which made the three of them overjoyed. Qin Chuan was right. Jing Yu is only afraid of him alone. He won't dare to act rashly with the Star Dragon. Thinking of this, Qian Wujin couldn't help but look at Qin Chuan with a subtle gaze. If he killed Qin Chuan now, Jing Yu would definitely die too. This way they could really rest easy. As if sensing Qian Wujin's thoughts, Qin Chuan smiled slightly and said to Qian Wujin indifferently, "You'd better not have any crooked thoughts about me. If I die, you won't get any benefits at all. If you don't believe me, you can give it a try." Hearing Qin Chuan's warning, Qian Wujin snorted coldly and said, "Don't worry, we're not people who will burn the bridge after crossing it." While they were talking, Qian Wujin and the other two had already landed on the deck of Star Dragon with Qin Chuan. When they found their footing, they finally looked excited, and they temporarily let down their guard. At the same time, they looked at Jing Yu, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, unable to move. "Jing Yu, have you ever thought that you would have a day like this?" Qian Wujin snorted coldly at Jing Yu. "You must have been very happy when you bombarded us with cannon fire." Upon hearing Qin Chuan's words, Jing Yu didn't respond. He only glared furiously at Qin Chuan, as though he hated Qin Chuan for sealing him and causing him to fall to his current state. "Seniors, why don't we go to the command center of Star Dragon and take control of it first?" Qin Chuan looked at Qian Wujin and the others. "We can only be at ease if we take control of Star Dragon as soon as possible, right?" Qin Chuan is right. We have to take control of Star Dragon first before we talk about anything else. Yi Ting glanced at Qian Wujin and Shimin Weiyang and said, "You two stay here and look after Qin Chuan and Jing Yu. I'll go to the command center to take control of Star Dragon." Qian Wujin and Shimin Weiyang's expressions changed when they heard Yi Ting's arrangement. Qian Wujin chuckled and said to Yi Ting, "I'm quite familiar with Star Dragon, so I can find the command center faster. Why don't you let me take control of Star Dragon's command center?" Hearing Qian Wujin's words, Yi Ting's expression suddenly changed, and he said in a deep voice, "Why? You don't trust me?" Hee, it's not that I don't trust you, but I feel more at ease when I do some things myself. Qian Wujin put on a fake smile. We've all lived for thousands of years, so we understand each other, don't we? Since that's the case, you can go. Yi Ting didn't argue with Qian Wujin and generously gave the opportunity to Qian Wujin. Qian Wujin's eyes lit up, but before he could do anything, Shimin Weiyang put forward a different opinion. Why don't I go with Brother Qian? The two of us can take care of each other. With Brother Ye's strength, he alone is enough to look after Qinchuan and Jingyu. Shimin Weiyang chuckled. I've never been to the command center of Star Dragon, so I really want to see what it looks like. Oh, you can discuss it among yourselves. I have no objection. Yi Ting sneered. He had already given the opportunity, so he naturally didn't care if there was one more person. Although Qian Wujin didn't want Shimin Weiyang to go with him, now that Yi Ting had made his attitude clear, he couldn't refuse. He could only say helplessly, then the two of us will go together. When Qian Wujin and Shimin Weiyang walked towards the depths of Star Dragon, only Qinchuan, Jingyu, and Yi Ting were left on the deck. Just as Yi Ting was waiting for Qian Wujin and Shimin Weiyang to come back and report, a clanging sound suddenly came from the depths of Star Dragon. Hearing this sound, Yi Ting's face suddenly turned gloomy. What happened? Hearing Yi Ting's words, Qinchuan shrugged and said, How would I know? Yi Ting looked at Qinchuan and was about to say something, but suddenly found that the formation map in front of Qinchuan was slowly dissipating. He immediately exclaimed to Qinchuan, The formation map is dispersing. Qinchuan looked down at the formation map in front of him, then raised his hand to scratch his head and said, Ah, the formation map is dispersing. Then let's do it. As soon as Qinchuan's voice fell, Jingyu, who was sitting on the ground, suddenly moved. He flew out like lightning, but his target wasn't Yi Ting, but Qinchuan. Shameless thief, I will kill you today. According to the original agreement, when Qinchuan lifted the seal, the two of them would immediately attack Yi Ting. However, compared to Yi Ting, Jingyu hated Qinchuan more. Therefore, the moment the seal was lifted, he launched an attack on Qinchuan, wanting to kill Qinchuan with one blow. Qinchuan seemed to have expected Jingyu's action. His figure flashed and turned into a bolt of lightning, arriving behind Yi Ting. After Qinchuan flashed away, the formation map that hadn't completely collapsed suddenly shook violently, and then suddenly exploded. The powerful explosion happened to hit Jingyu, who was flying over. Ah! Jingyu's screams came from the explosion, but Qinchuan completely ignored Jingyu and went straight for Yi Ting, who was sent flying away from Star Dragon by the explosion. Qinchuan. At this moment, Yi Ting obviously knew that he had fallen into Qinchuan's trap. Driven by his intense anger, he directly released his complete form and rushed toward Qinchuan like a madman. Seeing this, Qinchuan didn't have any intention of retreating. Instead, he also released his complete form and brazenly faced Yi Ting. The Milky Way sword in his hand pierced out, and the sky was filled with dazzling stars. Falling leaf! Yi Ting shouted angrily. He raised his hand and shot a leaf at Qinchuan. It collided with the Milky Way sword intent and was actually not at a disadvantage at all. Chapter 8:17. Qinchuan did not expect Yi Ting to release his complete form as soon as the battle started. After the first collision, he realized that he was no match for Yi Ting and could only barely maintain a stalemate. On the other hand, Yi Ting seemed to be getting braver as the battle went on. His aura soared into the sky, making him look like a god of war. When facing the exceedingly formidable Yi Ting, all Qinchuan could do was temporarily avoid him. Whoosh! Qinchuan's figure was like a bolt of lightning, and he left Star Dragon in the blink of an eye before flashing towards the distance. Yi Ting immediately chased after Qinchuan when he saw this, and his speed was actually slightly faster than Qinchuan. I've lived for thousands of years, and this is the first time I've been tricked by a brat like you. I've lost all my face. If I can't kill you today, what's the point of living? Speaking of which, Yi Ting's sudden outburst was not to be blamed. Thousands of years had passed since Yi Ting left the mountain. He founded the Yi family and left many myths and legends in the Star Dragon Federation. His life could be said to be extremely carefree and smooth. When he came out of seclusion this time, he thought that everything was still under his control. However, Qin Chuan jumped out and slapped him hard in the face. He was forced to swallow the bitter fruit in their first confrontation, and this time, he was tricked and played in the palm of Yi Ting's hand. If he could not vent his anger, he was really afraid that he would go crazy. Therefore, Yi Ting hated Qin Chuan to the core. The way he looked at Qin Chuan could be said to be extremely resentful. Today, even if he had to risk everything, he would kill Qin Chuan to vent the hatred in his heart. Qin Chuan truly felt a slight headache when he heard Yi Ting's words. He never imagined that Yi Ting would actually suddenly erupt at this moment, and it greatly exceeded his expectations and caused his plan to be completely disrupted. Based on Yi Ting's current appearance, it was obvious that Yi Ting was determined to kill him, and his state was simply more than a few times stronger than when they fought earlier. Just as Qin Chuan was thinking about this, Jing Yu, who was still on the deck of Star Dragon, walked out of the fire covered in blood. He stared at Qin Chuan in the distance with a ferocious look and roared, "Fire at full power and blast them to death." Following Jing Yu's command, the Star Dragon immediately began to operate. Regardless of whether it was the Star Destroyer cannon or the laser cannon, all of them locked onto the Qin Creek's Yi Ting duo and began to bombard them regardless of the cost. Rumble! The cannons roared. No matter how fast Qin Chuan and Yi Ting were, they could not dodge the bombardment that covered all directions. Although they were not killed by the cannons, their condition was affected by the impact of the cannons. Damn it, you're a classic example of kicking the pot asterisk. Qin Chuan glared hatefully at Star Dragon in the distance and gnashed his teeth. He completely forgot that he was the one who forced Jing Yu to cooperate with him with the little immortal trap talisman array first. On the other hand, Yi Ting was not having an easy time under the bombardment of Star Dragon. However, compared to Jing Yu, he hated Qin Chuan more. Therefore, even if he had to risk being hit by the cannons, he would make Qin Chuan pay the price for what he had done previously. Qin Chuan was currently dodging the bombardment of cannon fire when Yi Ting's figure abruptly charged out from the raging flames. He closed in on Qin Chuan like lightning, raised his hand, and smashed a fist onto Qin Chuan's chest. Qin Chuan, who was caught off guard, immediately fell towards the ground, and his face instantly turned pale. Qin Chuan's gaze was shocked as he looked at Yi Ting, who chased over, and he couldn't help but say, "Are you mad? Do you have to kill me?" Yi Ting said angrily, "Today, either you die or I die." Seeing that Yi Ting was so determined to kill him even under the bombardment of Star Dragon, Qin Chuan could not help but show a ruthless look on his face. He gritted his teeth and said, "Then let's hurt each other. Who's afraid of who?" "Sword, come!" Qin Chuan roared angrily. The galaxy sword swept over like a meteor and slashed toward Yi Ting. Facing the attack of the galaxy sword, Yi Ting raised his hand and waved countless leaves toward the galaxy sword. Meanwhile, he approached Qin Chuan at the fastest speed possible and attacked again. Three-leaf golden lotus. Yi Ting did not want to see Qin Chuan jumping around in front of him. He directly used his ultimate skill, wanting to kill him in one blow. Yi Ting's spiritual power surged and slowly condensed into a three-leaf golden lotus in his hand, emitting an extremely dazzling light. At the same time, it also emitted a frightening power fluctuation, causing the world to change color and the mountains and rivers to turn upside down. Seeing the three-leaf golden lotus in Yi Ting's hand, Qin Chuan's expression completely changed. He took out the Dragon Ball without any hesitation and directly used the first transformation of the Dragon Ball 9 transformations, Heavenly Light. Buzz! The hazy radiance of the three-leaf golden lotus collided with the golden radiance of the sky, intertwining and intertwining, turning the entire world into a hazy light pink and a resplendent gold. At this moment, the world suddenly quieted down. In the distant sky, Gao-en looked at the pale pink and gold that were rendered from afar and felt the terrifying power fluctuation contained in it. His expression could not help but become extremely ugly. One of the auras belongs to Qinchuan, and the other seems to belong to Yi Ting? This move, could it be the three-leaf golden lotus? The triple-leaf golden lotus was Yi Ting's ultimate skill that made him famous, and it was also the strongest move that had been passed down in the Yi clan until now. But unfortunately, there wasn't a single person in the Yi clan that had been passed down for over 1,000 years that was capable of learning this move, to the extent that only Yi Ting knew this move now. Although Gao-en had not personally seen the three-leaf golden lotus when it was used, he had heard that the three-leaf golden lotus would give birth to a hazy and illusory pink light that corresponded to the scene before him. As for the golden light, Gao-en could naturally guess that it was the heavenly light that Qinchuan had used twice before. We can't continue forward. Gao-en looked ahead with a gloomy gaze and said to everyone, regardless of whether it's heavenly light or the three-leaf golden lotus, both have the terrifying power to instantly kill us. We must wait for the light to disperse before continuing forward. Although he had never seen the power of the three-leaf golden lotus with his own eyes, he had seen the scene of Kargad being melted by the heavenly light. Now that the three-leaf golden lotus could be on par with the heavenly light, it could be seen that the three-leaf golden lotus power was definitely on par with the heavenly light. Even if there was a difference, it would not be by much. I've already sensed it. The Star Dragon is over there. In the crowd, Baiyu suddenly pointed at the Star Dragon. I'm going over. Hearing Baiyu's words, Gao-en frowned and said, the collision between the three-leaf golden lotus and the heavenly light hasn't ended yet. If we approach rashly now, we will definitely be affected. Let's wait a little longer. I can't wait. Baiyu shook her head. You can wait here. I'll go over myself. As she spoke, Baiyu had already flown in the direction of the Star Dragon. It was too late for Gao-en to stop her. He could only watch as Baiyu's figure disappeared within the range of the heavenly light and the three-leaf golden lotus. Chapter 8:18. On Star Dragon, Jingyu stood on the deck and stared at the dazzling light outside the defensive rune formation in shock. He was completely dumbfounded. It's actually the three-leaf golden lotus. Did that brat Qinchuan really drive Yi Ting crazy? Jingyu was in disbelief. Given their current age and condition, they were actually not suitable for high-intensity battles. Once they engaged in high-intensity battles, they would definitely consume a large amount of their lifespan, which was extremely difficult for them to accept. This was also why he had been using Star Dragon to attack instead of attacking personally. If Yi Ting wanted to use the three-leaf golden lotus, he had to be in his complete form. This attack would consume at least 10 years of Yi Ting's lifespan. How many more years could Yi Ting live? Just as Jingyu was in shock, he suddenly sensed an aura rapidly approaching Star Dragon. He frowned and looked at the aura. It was unfamiliar, not powerful, and even a little weak. How foolish! He actually relied on his physical body to move forward under the light of the three-leaf golden lotus. He'll probably be obliterated before he even gets close to Star Dragon. The corners of Jingyu's mouth revealed a wisp of a smile of disdain, and then he moved his attention onto Qinchuan and Yi Ting once more. He really wanted to see exactly who would win in the end. Baiyu was advancing rapidly toward Star Dragon amidst the light that filled the sky. Her body would suffer tremendous pain with every step she took. Even though she was usually expressionless, She could not help but frown at this moment. Her expression became a little ferocious. "Not yet, I have to get closer." Yu looked at Star Dragon that was flying quietly in the air and tried her best to take another step toward it. This time, her physical body finally could not bear it and collapsed. The powerful impact lasted for nearly 3 minutes before it finally stopped. The light that filled the sky also slowly dissipated. Yi Ting stood in the air and panted intensely. His youthful appearance had become much older at this moment, and his jet-black hair had turned gray in color, giving off the feeling of a hero past his prime. Yi Ting looked at the empty sky in front of him. He looked around but could not find Qinchuan's trace, nor could he sense Qinchuan's aura. He could not help but frown slightly and mumble softly. Could he have been obliterated by the 3-leaf golden lotus? He shouldn't be so weak. Just as Yi Ting was thinking about this, a golden cloud suddenly appeared above his head. An extremely terrifying pressure descended from the sky and enveloped him. Yi Ting looked up at the sky in shock. His eyes were filled with horror as he cried out involuntarily, "This is the lightning tribulation? Why would it suddenly appear at this time?" Just as Yi Ting was puzzled, a golden lightning tribulation power suddenly descended from the tribulation cloud and struck Yi Ting's body. Yi Ting immediately screamed and fell to the ground. Yi Ting looked at the golden blade that was stuck in his chest. His eyes were filled with confusion and confusion. Why would there be a blade in the lightning tribulation? Yi Ting could not figure it out. However, when he saw Qinchuan fall from the tribulation cloud, he suddenly understood everything. It turned out that the tribulation cloud did not appear because of him, but because of Qinchuan. However, how could Qinchuan have the ability to summon the tribulation cloud? However, now was clearly not the time to think about this because Qinchuan was already diving toward him. "Old dog Yi, I'll let you have a taste of the god's sword intent today," Qinchuan shouted in a low voice. He raised his hand and waved it, causing a few tens of God's sword intent to shoot explosively towards Yi Ting. When Yi Ting intended to dodge, the God's sword intent that pierced into his chest suddenly erupted with an extremely strong energy of tribulation lightning, and it instantly paralyzed Yi Ting's body, causing him to be unable to move. He could only watch helplessly as the God's sword intent accurately pierced into his body. Bang! Yi Ting's body fell heavily to the ground, smashing out an extremely deep pit. He lay in the pit, and his entire body had been nailed to death by the God's sword intent. He had completely lost the ability to resist. Dong! Qinchuan's body landed steadily beside Yi Ting. Looking at Yi Ting, whose face was filled with unwillingness, he sneered and said, "Your treatment isn't bad. This is the first time the God's sword intent has been used in an actual battle. Ever since the tribulation, the God's sword intent had been on the verge of shattering because it had absorbed a large amount of golden lightning tribulation power. It had been nurtured in Qinchuan's brain all this time. After a period of nurturing, it finally gradually recovered. It was also because of this that Qinchuan used the God's sword intent earlier. He did not expect the effect to be so good. God's sword intent? Yi Ting chuckled. You actually call yourself God? The God's sword intent's original meaning is a brand new sword intent born from the Milky Way sword intent. In order to pay homage to sword god Suinha, it's called the God's sword intent. I'm not explaining this to you to prove anything, because to the current you, I am indeed God. I can control your life and death. Qinchuan's gaze was slightly cold as he looked at Yi Ting. If it wasn't for the light earlier, he might not even have the chance to execute the God's sword intent before dying under the terrifying might of the 3-leaf golden lotus. Yi Ting had the power to instantly kill Ka Feng, but he used it on him, who was also a human. How could he be in a good mood? Yi Ting slowly closed his eyes and said to Qinchuan, "Kill me." Even though Yi Ting's heart was filled with unwillingness, He could not deny the fact that he had lost to Qinchuan once again. Last time, it could be said that he did not use his full strength and did not understand Qinchuan. But what about this time? What reason could he find to explain himself? He had lived for thousands of years, but he had lost to a brat who was not even 30 years old. What was the point of living? Qinchuan saw that Yi Ting was begging for death and sneered. You can't die yet. I will keep you alive. Moreover, losing to me isn't a shameful thing because you're not the only one who will lose to me. As he spoke, Qinchuan's body slowly rose into the air and looked at the star dragon not far away. After dealing with Yi Ting, it was time to deal with Jingyu. Just as Qinchuan was thinking about this, several figures suddenly landed beside him in the sky. It was Gao En and the others who had come to support him from the elf city. Qinchuan saw Gao En's figure and chuckled. Brother Gao, you came at the right time. I was just about to attack the star dragon. Gao En glanced at Yi Ting, who lay within the deep pit with a dispirited aura, and a wisp of a complicated expression couldn't help but flash within his eyes. Even though he had many things he wanted to say to Qinchuan, now was obviously not the time because he had even more important things to tell Qinchuan. Bai Yu rushed into the light of the three-leaf golden lotus just now. Chapter 8:19. What? Qinchuan turned pale with fright when he heard Gaoen's words. Why didn't you stop her? Gaoen looked guilty as he said to Qinchuan, I'm sorry, it's my fault. I couldn't stop her. At that time, Bai Yu only wanted to rush into the coverage of the three-leaf golden lotus. At such a close distance, Gao En, who was unprepared, could not stop her in time. By the time he realized his mistake, it was already too late. Bai Yu had already disappeared. Looking at Gao En's guilty expression, Qinchuan took a deep breath and asked, Why did she rush into the light of the three-leaf golden lotus? When I told you that I had a way to control Star Dragon, it was actually not my idea. It was Bai Yu's idea. She didn't want me to tell you the truth. At that time, the situation was urgent, so I agreed. I thought that she would explain everything to you after seeing you, but I didn't expect. Speaking of this, the guilt on Gaoen's face could not help but deepen. He was already too ashamed to face Qinchuan. Hearing Gaoen's words, Qinchuan's face suddenly turned livid. He looked at Star Dragon not far away and said coldly, You guys stay here and look after Yi Ting. I'll go find Bai Yu. After Qinchuan left, the people standing beside Gao En could not help but frown and say, That Bai Yu rushed into the light of the three-leaf golden lotus on her own initiative. What does it have to do with us? Why did he give us that look? Does he really think that he's the master of our Star Dragon Federation? Isn't he looking down on you too much? That's right. Those who don't know would think that he's the president. Hearing this, the others echoed one after another. They felt that Qinchuan had gone too far just now. They were all condemning Qinchuan. Ha ha, how ridiculous. A bunch of ants don't even have the slightest bit of self-awareness. At this moment, an extremely loud laughter suddenly came from the deep pit. Yi Ting looked at everyone with a mocking gaze, as if he was looking at a group of idiots. What are you laughing at? Who are you calling an ant? Someone questioned Yi Ting. If it was in the past, they naturally wouldn't dare to speak to Yi Ting in such a tone. But now, Yi Ting was just a prisoner. I'm laughing because all of you are idiots. Yi Ting sneered. When Qinchuan was present earlier, why didn't all of you stand out and condemn Qinchuan? Now that Qinchuan is gone, all of you are emboldened. What a joke. Everyone flushed red when faced with Yi Ting's ridicule. They wanted to defend themselves but were stopped by Gaoen. I'm very grateful for what you said just now. I can understand your feelings, but I don't agree with your actions. Gaoen took a deep look at the crowd. If it weren't for Qinchuan, Zerg would be wreaking havoc in the Star Dragon Federation right now, and we would all be dead by now. I hope you can remember that Qinchuan is our savior. Everyone's faces were filled with shame when they heard Gowan's words. "I'll pretend that nothing happened this time. If you do it again, I'll drive you away. You can go anywhere, but I won't let you stay by my side." Gowan looked at everyone sternly. "I'll only say this once." Yi Ting lay in the pit and watched Gowan teach everyone a lesson. He couldn't help but have a complicated expression on his face. Previously, he was mocking others, but he was also mocking himself. He thought that he was high and mighty and enjoyed endless glory, but once he fell from the clouds, he realized that he was just an ordinary person. Maybe I really made the wrong choice back then. Whoosh. Qinchuan's figure quickly approached Star Dragon. At the same time, Star Dragon fired continuously at Qinchuan. "Qinchuan, there's no deep hatred between us. Why don't we stop here? Star Dragon is now in my hands. It's the key to going to the outside world. I can promise you that when I leave the land of exile, I'll take you with me." Jingyu looked at Qinchuan, who was standing not far away, with fear in his eyes. Qinchuan's strength had completely exceeded his expectations. Even Yi Ting's three-leaf golden lotus could not kill Qinchuan. It was basically impossible for him to suppress Qinchuan with the help of Star Dragon's firepower. If he was still in peak condition, he could rely on the advantage of the cannons to fight Qinchuan. However, he was now seriously injured and was definitely no match for Qinchuan. Therefore, in order to protect himself, he could only pin his hopes on negotiation. When Qinchuan heard Jingyu's words, he asked, "Did you see a white-haired girl?" Jingyu was slightly taken aback. A white-haired girl? Involuntarily, Jingyu thought of the figure who rushed to Star Dragon like a moth to a flame. Could the white-haired girl that Qinchuan mentioned be that person? When Qinchuan saw the change in Jingyu's expression, he guessed that Jingyu must know Bai Yu's whereabouts. He asked again, "Have you seen her?" "I haven't seen the girl you mentioned, but when you were fighting with Yi Ting, I sensed a little guy in the exceptional gold core realm trying to get close to Star Dragon. However, that little guy's aura was soon drowned out by the light of the three-leaf golden lotus." Jingyu looked at Qinchuan. "Maybe that little guy is the white-haired girl you mentioned." Hearing Jingyu's words, Qinchuan immediately asked, "Where did you sense that aura disappear?" Jingyu pointed to the north and said to Qinchuan, "Is it over there? It's about 15 kilometers away." Upon hearing this, Qinchuan immediately turned and flew to the north. Looking at Qinchuan's back, Jingyu's eyes flashed with coldness. He ordered, "Take out the divine artillery and aim at the hillside 15 kilometers away in the north." Whoosh! Qinchuan was extremely fast. After a few flashes in the air, he arrived at the place that Jingyu mentioned. After arriving here, he did sense Bai Yu's remaining aura, but he did not see Bai Yu. This made Qinchuan's heart sink. "Bai Yu!" Qinchuan shouted. His voice spread far and wide, but no one responded to him. "Bai Yu, where are you?" Qinchuan shouted again, but there was still no response. Just when Qinchuan wanted to go to other places to find Bai Yu, Lu Zi's figure suddenly flew over from afar. "Qinchuan, Bai Yu is here." Hearing Lu Zi's words, Qinchuan's face suddenly showed a touch of excitement. Just when he was about to go and meet up with Lu Zi, a strong sense of crisis suddenly appeared in his heart. At the same time, Star Dragon in the distance suddenly fired a red shell straight at Qinchuan. Chapter 820. In the distance, Lu Zi saw the red cannonball falling from the sky. She immediately exclaimed, "Qinchuan, watch out!" Before Lu Zi could finish her sentence, she was sent flying backward by an extremely terrifying explosion. The hillside where Qinchuan was standing earlier had been engulfed in flames. The space within a radius of dozens of kilometers had completely turned into a sea of fire. The scorching heat was enough to melt any metal in an instant. Jingyu couldn't help but laugh when he saw this scene in the distance. He proudly said, "This is a divine cannon that I've carefully studied for many years. The temperature generated by the explosion was at least 4,000 degrees. Even if you're an expert in the divine transformation realm, there's no way you can come out unscathed." Just as Jingyu was laughing proudly, a red figure suddenly rushed out of the sea of fire and quickly attacked the Star Dragon. It crashed into the defensive rune array of the Star Dragon with a loud bang. Boom! The red figure was repelled by the defensive rune array and slammed into the mountain. The red figure looked like it was in pain as its aura withered. Jingyu looked at the figure embedded in the mountain, and a look of dread flashed across his face. He said in a deep voice, "I really didn't expect your life to be so tenacious. You actually didn't die after being hit by the divine cannon." Hearing Jingyu's words, Qin Chuan, whose body was boiling hot, glared at Jingyu and said, "You bastard, how can I die if you're not dead yet?" If it weren't for the fact that he was so worried about Bai Yu's safety that he neglected his guard against the Star Dragon, Jingyu's sneak attack wouldn't have succeeded. "Hee, even if you're not dead yet, I don't think it's any different from being dead. Why don't you let me send you on your way?" Jingyu sneered. Although Qin Chuan was not dead yet, his condition was extremely bad. The firepower of the Star Dragon was enough to slowly kill Qin Chuan. Although Qin Chuan was extremely angry when he heard Jingyu's words, there was nothing he could do. The high temperature generated at the moment of the explosion had filled all the meridians in his body with the power of flames. He could only use 30% of the spiritual power in his body. It was impossible for him to resist the bombardment of the Star Dragon's cannons for a short time. Even if the Star Dragon's cannons couldn't kill him immediately, they could torture him to death bit by bit. "You despicable man, you're shameless!" Qin Chuan angrily cursed Jingyu, but Jingyu acted as if he didn't hear him. He looked extremely calm as he smiled and waved at Qin Chuan and said, "Goodbye, my friend." As Jingyu's cannons, the Star Dragon's cannons were to bombard him from all directions until they ran out of bullets. At this moment, Lu Zi's figure suddenly appeared in front of the Star Dragon. "Bastard, don't even think about hurting Qin Chuan." Hearing LVZ's angry hushing, Jingyu couldn't help but raise his eyes to look at LVZ. He sneered and said, "Don't be anxious. Once we've dealt with Qin Chuan, I'll send you down to meet him." I said, "Don't even think about hurting Qin Chuan." Lu Zi shouted and suddenly threw a soul-luring bottle at the Star Dragon. The soul-luring bottle shattered in the air, and a pale soul flew out of it straight toward the Star Dragon. Qin Chuan, who was embedded in the mountain, looked at the soul flying toward Star Dragon, and shock flashed across his eyes. He cried out involuntarily, "Bai Yu?" Hearing Qin Chuan's cry, Bai Yu, who had lost her physical body and only her soul survived, turned around and smiled at Qin Chuan. She said silently, "Qin Chuan, thank you." "Humph, stop pretending to be mysterious." Jingyu looked at Bai Yu and immediately ordered the Star Dragon to launch a soul power attack at her to destroy her soul. However, just as the soul power cannon aimed at Bai Yu and was about to launch an attack, the Star Dragon suddenly trembled violently. Jingyu looked at the deck that kept shaking under his feet in shock. Before he could figure out why this happened, an extremely powerful energy wave suddenly erupted from the inside of the Star Dragon. The deck of the Star Dragon collapsed and turned into debris. Buzz! A faint green light suddenly bloomed from the exploding Star Dragon. Then, a towering tree emerged from the sea of fire caused by the explosion, shocking everyone. Bai Yu looked at the towering tree that grew out of the raging fire with a complicated expression. She said softly, "The Star Dragon is just a steel shell on the hope. When this steel shell shatters, the Star Dragon will no longer exist in this world. There will only be a new hope." Boom! The towering tree completely disintegrated the Star Dragon into countless parts. Faint green light emitted from the crown of the towering tree and surged in all directions. Bai Yu's soul seemed to be summoned and slowly floated toward the towering tree. Bit by bit, she disappeared into the towering tree. After Bai Yu's soul fused into the towering rock and disappeared, the towering tree suddenly twisted and turned into a huge, verdant wooden flying ship in the air. The Hope? Looking at the Hope flying in the air, Qin Chuan was deeply shocked. He always thought the Star Dragon was just a modification of the Hope's original foundation. He never thought the Hope and the Star Dragon were two completely different things. Qin Chuan wasn't the only one who was shocked. Jingyu, who had been in control of Star Dragon for thousands of years, was also stunned. He thought that he had studied Star Dragon thoroughly, but he didn't expect that what he had studied was only the surface. This is the Hope? A real spaceship of the universe. Gowon's eyes were filled with shock as he stared at the Hope. He had read many of his ancestors' records, and they only described the Hope as shocking, powerful, and unparalleled intelligence. There was no record of what the Hope looked like. Now that he saw the Hope, he finally understood how those ancestors felt. Words couldn't describe the impact and shock that the Hope had brought to the people. The Star Dragon was just a puppet. The Hope hidden inside was the real spaceship that could cross the universe. No wonder I couldn't find out what was so special about the Star Dragon after so many years. It's not the Star Dragon that can take me to the outside world. Jing Yu's face was filled with pain and regret. If he had discovered this earlier, perhaps he would have gone to the outside world and become a soul-forming cultivator or even stronger. However, Jing Yu could only think about it because it was useless even if he discovered the Hope's secret. The only ones who could awaken the Hope were the Blood Elves, and Bai Yu was the only one in the world who had this qualification. Chapter 8:21. Buzz. The reborn Hope slowly released a soft green light that fell on Qinchuan's body. Qinchuan's injuries healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. The power of fire accumulated in Qinchuan's meridians was also dispelled in an instant. Not only that, but a large cluster of flowers and plants grew wildly around Qinchuan, exuding an extremely rich aura of life. Then, Qinchuan's body slowly flew toward the Hope under the guidance of the green light. When Jingyu saw this scene on the ground, he immediately wanted to turn around and escape. At this moment, an extremely long vine suddenly grew out of the Hope and wrapped around Jingyu. Seeing this, Jingyu tried to cut off the vine, but the vine was extremely tough. No matter how hard Jingyu tried, he could not even leave a mark on it. Swoosh! Swoosh! The vine tightly wrapped around Jingyu's body. No matter how Jingyu struggled, he could not break free. This made Jingyu feel a sense of despair. The fire power of the Star Dragon was nothing compared to the miraculous power of the Hope. He had carefully kept it like a treasure for thousands of years. Qinchuan slowly landed on the deck. Looking at the forest-like deck of the Hope in front of him, his eyes were full of curiosity. At this moment, a figure slowly appeared before him. It was Bai Yu who had entered the Hope earlier. However, compared to her soul state at that time, Bai Yu was no different from a normal person now. Moreover, her hair had turned into a verdant green. She looked as pure and beautiful as a forest elf. Bai Yu? You've been resurrected? Qinchuan looked at Bai Yu standing in front of him with a face full of surprise. Bai Yu shook her head and explained to Qinchuan, I haven't been resurrected. What you see now is the state of the Hope's soul. In essence, I'm still a soul. It's just that I look more real. Hearing Bai Yu's words, Qinchuan was a little surprised. Soul? Are you saying that the Hope is a Taoist weapon? Bai Yu nodded and said to Qinchuan, thousands of years ago, the Hope was built by the combined efforts of the entire race. It is indeed a Taoist weapon and a supreme grade one. A top-grade Tao artifact. Upon hearing Bai Yu's explanation, Qinchuan couldn't help but gasp. Back then, Zeus Technologies' glove had only displayed power equivalent to a mid-grade Tao artifact, and it had already been broken by the various forces. Now, the hope was actually a top-grade Tao artifact. If this news were to spread, it would definitely cause a sensation in the entire world. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that whoever owned the hope would conquer the world. Even a full-circle nascent soul stage cultivator might not be able to last more than a few rounds against the hope. Jingyu was a good example. Now that you've become the weapon soul, will there be any bad consequences? Qin Chuan looked at Bai Yu worriedly. To be honest, if he had to choose, he would prefer Bai Yu to be a normal person and not a weapon soul. If there's a bad consequence, it's probably that I'll never be able to leave the hope again. Bai Yu smiled faintly. For others, this might be a very difficult thing to accept, but for me, the last of the elven race's bloodline, being able to stay on the hope is a very happy thing. Hearing Bai Yu's words, Qin Chuan's expression couldn't help but become somewhat complicated. He didn't know whether Bai Yu was truly happy or just trying to find joy in the midst of suffering. Bai Yu saw the change in Qin Chuan's expression and smiled at Qin Chuan. Actually, as the weapon soul of the hope, I'll be more at ease because this way, I won't have to worry about so many things and can simply stay by your side. As she spoke, Bai Yu took a step forward and grabbed Qin Chuan's hand. She gently bit Qin Chuan's index finger and sucked Qin Chuan's blood into her mouth. Seeing Bai Yu's actions, Qin Chuan was slightly stunned. It wasn't until some faint telepathy between him and Bai Yu that he realized Bai Yu's actions just now were to recognize him as her master. Bai Yu, I'm willing to do this, you don't have to feel any psychological burden. Moreover, the hope is a top-grade Tao tool and needs to be nourished by spirit force. You're the most suitable master, aren't you? Bai Yu interrupted Qin Chuan. She didn't want to hear Qin Chuan say something she didn't like to hear. She looked at Qin Chuan with an extremely serious gaze and said to Qin Chuan, "If you want someone else to become my master, then cut off the telepathy between you and the hope." Hearing Bai Yu's words, Qin Chuan's belly full of words finally turned into a deep sigh. When Jingyu saw Qin Chuan's reaction, he couldn't help but reveal a furious expression. Everyone else dreamed of obtaining a top-grade Tao artifact like the hope, yet Qin Chuan was still unwilling even though the opportunity was already in his hands. How infuriating! Jingyu, who was still tied up by the vines, couldn't help but reveal a furious expression. "Qin Chuan, if you want to kill me or cut me into pieces, just do it." When Qin Chuan heard this, he turned to Jingyu and said, "Don't worry, I won't let you live. The others can live, but you can't." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Jingyu's expression suddenly froze. He didn't expect that he wouldn't be able to receive the same treatment as Yi Ting from Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan actually wanted to kill him. "You won't kill Yi Ting, so why do you want to kill me?" Jingyu angrily roared. He wasn't willing to accept this. He needed a reasonable explanation. Qin Chuan looked deeply at Jingyu and said in a deep voice, "Everyone has the right to kill evil cultivators. People like you who harm others for their own benefit deserve to be killed." If Jingyu hadn't imparted evil techniques to Shangguan Yuanhao wouldn't have killed his parents. In the end, it was Jingyu who ruined his family. Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Jingyu angrily roared, "Qin Chuan, you'll die a horrible death." "Even if I die, I won't." Pfft. Before Jingyu could finish his words, the vines wrapped around his body instantly grew countless sharp thorns and pierced his body. They directly erased his soul, causing him to completely disappear from this world. Whoosh! Jingyu's corpse was thrown out of the hope by the vines. It fell to the ground and turned into a cloud of dust before it even touched the ground. After doing all this, Bai Yu looked at Qin Chuan and asked, "You won't blame me for making the decision for you, right?" Qin Chuan used Bai Yu as an excuse and said, "Jingyu deserved to die. No matter who killed him, I'll only feel satisfied." Now that Shangguan Yuanhao was dead, the main culprit, Jingyu, was also dead. Qin Chuan could be considered to have gotten his revenge and could finally put down one of his worries. After dealing with the matters in the Star Dragon Federation, he would embark on a journey to the outside world in search of a wider world. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.